Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a bunch of new stories for you. Let's start right away with the first one. It is titled, "While I was on vacation, my daughter sold my house to pay off her deadbeat husband's debts. When I returned, they mocked me, 'Now you're homeless.' I just smiled. What's so funny?" They snapped, irritated. I replied that the house they sold was actually, the key snapped in the lock. I stood there for a moment, staring at the broken piece of metal in my hand, my luggage still sitting on the driveway behind me. The Arizona sun beat down on my neck as I tried the lock again with the remaining stub. Nothing. My electronic garage opener had already failed. The little green light just blinked red when I pressed it. Even the doorbell camera, the one Jennifer had insisted I install last year, showed no recognition when I waved at it. "Can I help you?" A man stood in my doorway. My doorway. He was younger than me, maybe 50, wearing a Cardinals t-shirt I'd never seen before. Behind him, I could see my foyer, but the walls were a different color. Sage green instead of the cream I'd lived with for 15 years. This is my house," I said, the words coming out strangled. I checked the number on the wall, 2847. "Right number, right street. I'm Robert Mitchell. I live here." The man's expression shifted from suspicious to uncomfortable. "Sir, I think there's been some mistake. We bought this house 3 weeks ago. I'm Samuel Thompson." My knees actually buckled. I had to grab the door frame, my door frame, to stay upright. 3 weeks ago, I'd been on a small boat in Prince William Sound, watching orcas breach in the distance. 3 weeks ago, I'd finally taken the Alaska fishing trip I'd been promising myself since retirement. "That's impossible," I heard myself say. My voice sounded thin, like someone else was speaking. "I own this house. I've owned it since 2010. Samuel Thompson. And how could there be a Samuel Thompson in my house?" Pulled out his phone. "Gloria," he called over his shoulder. "Maybe you should call the police." "No, wait." I fumbled for my own phone, my finger suddenly clumsy. "There's been a mistake. My daughter, Jennifer, she was supposed to be watching the place." I hit Jennifer's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Samuel stood in the doorway, not threatening, but not moving either. His wife, Gloria, apparently, appeared behind him, already on her phone. I could hear her giving someone our address. "My address? Dad." Jennifer's voice was strange, tight. "Are you back?" "There are strangers in our house," I said. The words tumbled out desperate and confused. "Jennifer, what's happening? Why are there people in the house?" Silence, then a sigh. That particular sigh she'd perfected as a teenager. The one that meant I was being difficult. "Dad, stop being dramatic." I sold it. The world tilted. I actually had to sit down on my own front step, or what used to be my front step. Samuel Thompson took a step back. Maybe worried I was having a heart attack. I felt like I might be. "You what?" "I sold the house. Michael needed the money for his debts. We had that power of attorney. Remember from when you had your gallbladder surgery?" Michael, I could hear him in the background actually laughing. My son-in-law was laughing while my daughter explained how she'd sold my home. "Jennifer, you can't just sell someone's house. That's not what power of attorney means. That's not it's done. Dad, check into a hotel. We need to talk." She hung up. My daughter hung up on me while I sat on a stranger's front step. My front step with my broken key still clutched in my hand. The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers, both young enough to be my grandchildren. They were professional, even sympathetic. But the documentation Samuel Thompson showed them was clear. Sale completed 3 weeks ago. New deed filed with the county. Everything legal and proper, at least on paper. "Sir," the younger officer said, her hand gentle on my elbow. "If you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have to escort you." I stood up slowly, my body moving on autopilot. 40 years of legal training kicked in, and I found myself automatically cataloging everything. The date on the sale documents, the signature that looked like mine but couldn't be. The notary seal, Jennifer had been thorough. "My luggage," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. Samuel Thompson, and I was already starting to hate that name, helped me load my suitcases into the police car. "Not arrested," the officers assured me repeatedly. "Just a courtesy ride to a hotel." They were kind about it, which somehow made it worse. As we pulled away, I turned to look back at my house through the rear window. New landscaping out front. Desert roses where my lawn used to be. A different mailbox. Small changes that added up to a razor. 15 years of my life gone in 3 weeks. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Fairmont Scottsdale. I booked you a room. We'll talk tomorrow. The older officer glanced at me in the rearview mirror. You okay back there, sir? I nodded, still staring at that text. My daughter had booked me a hotel room. She'd planned this. While I was in Alaska, watching the northern lights and feeling grateful for my life, for my family. She'd been stealing everything. Actually, I said, my voice surprising me with its steadiness. I'm going to need a lawyer. The officer nodded, probably thinking I meant for a civil dispute. He didn't understand yet. Neither did Jennifer. 40 years in corporate law had taught me many things, but the most important was this. Documents tell stories. And forged documents. They tell the most interesting stories of all. The Fairmont Scottsdale princess rose from the desert like a monument to excess. All pink stucco and palm trees. The police officers had been kind enough to drive me here, even helping with my luggage. The younger one had slipped me a business card for a victim's advocate. Victim. That word sat in my stomach like a stone. The hotel lobby was all marble and soft lighting, the kind of place Jennifer would choose to make a point. See, Dad, I can afford to put you up somewhere nice. I'm not a monster. The concierge smiled at me with practiced sympathy as I approached the desk. My suitcase is still smelling of Alaskan sea spray. Checking in? She asked. Name? Robert Mitchell. My daughter made a reservation. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Oh, yes, Mr. Mitchell. Jennifer Carter called earlier. She said you might be tired from your travels. Tired? Is that what Jennifer had told them? I wondered what else she'd said. That I was confused, senile. The rage that had been building since my key broke in the lock threatened to spill over, but I pushed it down. 40 years of depositions had taught me the value of a neutral expression. How long will you be staying with us? The clerk asked, sliding the key cards across the marble counter. That depends, I said, taking the cards. On how long it takes to reclaim what's mine. The room was on the 3rd floor, overlooking the golf course. I sat on the bed for a full minute, just breathing. Then I opened my laptop. Thank God for cloud storage. Thank God for my paranoid habit of scanning everything. The documents were all there. The Mitchell Family Trust established 2010. The deed to the house clearly stating that any sale required signatures from all trustees. Me, Jennifer, and my son David in Seattle, who I'd bet my last dollar had no idea what his sister had done. I found the power of attorney. Jennifer had mentioned limited power of attorney specifically for medical decisions during my gallbladder surgery 2 years ago. It had expired 6 months after the procedure. She'd known that. Of course she'd known that. My phone rang. David. Dad. Jennifer just called me. She said you're having some kind of episode. Your sister sold my house while I was in Alaska. Silence. Then she did what? She forged my signature, David. And yours, too, I'm betting, since the trust required all 3 of us to approve any sale. Jesus Christ, Dad, I'll fly down. No, not yet. I need to handle this correctly. I pulled up another document, the sale paperwork Samuel Thompson had shown me. Someone had emailed it to the police who'd forwarded it to me. Professional courtesy. David, did you sign anything about the house recently? Nothing, Dad. You know I wouldn't. I know. I studied the signatures. Mine was close, but the R was wrong. I'd spent a career looking at documents, and forgeries always had tells. I need you to send me a notarized statement that you never signed any sale documents. Can you do that today? Already walking to my car. Dad, why would she do this? I thought about Michael's laughter in the background of that phone call. Gambling debts, probably. Your brother-in-law always did think he was smarter than the house. After David hung up, I sat in that expensive hotel room, still in yesterday's travel clothes, and made a decision. I could call the police now, report the forgery. But that would be simple theft, maybe some jail time. No, Jennifer had stolen more than a house. She'd stolen my trust, my security, my faith, and family. I wanted her to understand what that felt like. The next morning, I drove my rental car to Jennifer's house in Paradise Valley. Of course, she lived in Paradise Valley in a house twice the size of the one she'd stolen from me. Michael's real estate development business was supposedly booming, but now I wondered how much of their lifestyle was built on credit and lies. Michael answered the door in a bathrobe at 10 o'clock in the morning, a cup of coffee in his hand. He didn't look surprised to see me. Robert, he said, not even pretending to call me Dad anymore. Jen's in the kitchen. The house smelled like new money. Candles that cost more than most people's groceries. Fresh flowers in every room. Jennifer sat at a marble island that could have seated 12. Her laptop open, her expression already set in that defensive mask I recognized from her teenage years. Dad, she started. Before you say anything, 380,000, I said, sitting down across from her. That's the number, isn't it? That's what Michael owes. Michael's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. Jennifer's mouth opened, then closed. How did you? I've been awake since 4 a.m. making calls. Amazing what people will tell a retired corporate lawyer who mentions the words federal investigation and fraud. Your husband's bookie was particularly chatty. Michael sat down his mug too hard, coffee sloshing. You don't know who you're dealing with, old man. No, I said, keeping my voice level. You don't. Sit down, Michael. He sat. 40 years of commanding boardrooms had uses beyond corporate law. Here's what's going to happen, Jennifer said, rallying. You're 67, Dad. You don't need that big house. Consider this retirement planning. We've set aside money for a nice assisted living place. The same place you had Mother in before she died. That hit home. Jennifer flinched. She'd put my wife in the cheapest facility she could find. Visited once a month, if that. I'd spent every day there, watching the love of my life fade in a room that smelled like industrial disinfectant and despair. You're right, I said, standing. I am retiring. Jennifer's face relaxed slightly. From being your safety net. I walked to the door, then turned back. They were both still sitting there. Jennifer's mouth open. Michael's face flushed red. You committed forgery, fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. Those are just the state charges. The federal charges will be much more interesting. I pulled out my phone, took a photo of them sitting there in their marble kitchen. James Harrison sends his regards, by the way. You remember James, former federal prosecutor. He's fascinated by your case. Outside, I stood on their manicured lawn and really looked at their house. 6 bedrooms for 2 people, 3-car garage with a Tesla, a Range Rover, and a Porsche. A pool that sparkled unused in the backyard. All of it built on sand, waiting for the tide to come in. I texted Harrison, gather the team. We're going to war. I'd been a father for 39 years. Tried to protect Jennifer even when she didn't deserve it. But standing there in the morning sun, looking at the house she'd bought with stolen money, I felt something shift inside me. The part of me that made excuses for her, that said she was still my little girl, that part died as cleanly as if it had been surgically removed. Time to be something else. Time to be what Jennifer had forced me to become, a predator. Harrison's office building stood like a glass and steel monument to justice, or at least to billable hours. The elevator ride to the 14th floor took forever. Brass doors reflecting a version of me I barely recognized. 3 days of hotel living had sharpened something in my face. The soft grandfather was gone. What stared back looked more like the prosecutor I'd been 40 years ago before corporate law softened my edges. Margaret Harrison's secretary stood when I entered. We'd worked together during the Pembroke merger and I know her smile wavered between sympathy and excitement. She lived for cases like this. He's waiting in conference room A. She said with the team. The hallway stretched ahead, marble floors echoing each step like a countdown. That smell hit me first. Leather chairs and old paper, the perfume of legal warfare. It pulled me back to my first big case when I'd been young and believed justice was simple. Harrison had transformed the conference room into a command center. Papers covered the mahogany table in neat rows, color-coded and labeled. 4 laptops hummed. 2 printers waited like soldiers. The whiteboard showed a timeline that made Jennifer's deception look like what it was. Criminal Robert Harrison stood, all 6 feet 4 inches of him, silver hair still perfect at 70. Ready to destroy them, the forensics expert arrived at 9:30 sharp. Dr. Patricia Chen carried equipment that looked better suited for a crime lab than a law office. She spread Jennifer's forged documents across the table, then produced a magnifying apparatus that could probably see individual atoms. Look here, she said, positioning the lens over my supposed signature. The pressure patterns are completely wrong. Your authentic signature shows consistent rightward slant with heavy downstrokes. This, she tapped the forgery, was written by someone naturally left-handed, compensating with their right hand. Jennifer was left-handed, had been since childhood, after she broke her right arm falling off her bike. The ink aging is even more damning, Chen continued, pulling out another device. This document claims to be from February 20th, but the ink chemistry shows it's less than 4 weeks old, maybe 3. Harrison was taking notes on his legal pad, the scratching of his pen, the only sound. Then he looked up. This is textbook fraud, Robert. Prosecutable, winnable, devastating. The timeline on the whiteboard told the story better than any closing argument. February 20th, Jennifer claimed I signed the sale documents. February 20th, her Instagram showed her at the Bellagio in Vegas, champagne glass raised. February 21st, another post, poolside. February 22nd, still Vegas. Meanwhile, I'd been in Phoenix that entire week, medical appointments every day, all documented. There's more, Harrison said. He pulled out another file. The notary who authenticated these documents, Linda Walsh, guess who she works for? I waited. Sylvia Chen, the real estate agent who handled the sale, Jennifer's college roommate. The pieces clicked together like chambering around. This wasn't impulse or desperation. This was conspiracy. I want this airtight, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. No escape routes, no technicalities. When we drop this on them, I want it to be complete annihilation. Harrison smiled. The kind of smile that had terrified Fortune 500 CEOs. We'll file 3 ways: civil for damages and house return. Criminal for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Federal for wire fraud, and conspiracy. Dr. Chen packed her equipment carefully. Mr. Mitchell, in 30 years of forensic document examination, I've never seen such amateur work. Your daughter might have succeeded with a casual observer, but under any real scrutiny, this falls apart completely. How quickly can we freeze their assets? I asked Harrison. By end of day, they won't be able to buy coffee tomorrow. We walked to the courthouse through morning heat that was already oppressive. March in Arizona was unpredictable. Freezing one day, blazing the next. Today felt like summer had arrived early, adding urgency to everything. The court clerk's eyes widened as she read through the filing. Harrison had assembled something beautiful in its thoroughness. Every document, every piece of evidence, every legal precedent arranged like movements in a symphony of destruction. Mr. Harrison, she said, this is one of the most comprehensive filings I've seen. Judge Martinez agreed to see us immediately. Professional courtesy, Harrison called it. 2 old warriors asking a favor from another. The emergency injunction was signed within an hour. Asset freeze immediate and complete. Jennifer and Michael's accounts, their property, even their cars, all frozen pending investigation. The process server was a young woman named Amy, eager and efficient. Harrison had chosen her specifically because she had a body camera. Standard procedure for her company. Workplace or home? She asked. Workplace, I said. Lunch hour maximum witnesses. We followed in Harrison's Mercedes, parking across from Jennifer's office building, Phoenix Financial Advisory, where she'd worked for 15 years, where her colleagues thought she was a devoted daughter caring for her aging father. Amy entered at 127. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, we could see the reception area, then Amy being directed deeper into the building. Then nothing for 5 minutes. 6-7 at 12:25, we saw it. Jennifer in a glass-walled conference room, client presentation in full swing. Amy entering, the envelope extended. Jennifer's face changing from annoyance to confusion to shock. Her clients, 3 men in expensive suits, watching her world crack. My phone rang. Jennifer's panicked breathing filled my ear before she spoke. Dad, what have you done? My credit cards aren't working. The bank says my accounts are frozen. Michael's voice roared in the background, cursing and breaking things. I heard glass shatter. Jennifer's breathing got more ragged. You committed fraud, Jennifer. You stole my house. What did you expect? Dad, you don't understand. Michael knows people. Dangerous people. If we can't pay them, that sounds like a you problem. I hung up and immediately called Vincent Morales, a private investigator I'd used during my corporate days. He answered on the first ring. Roberto thought you'd retired. So did I. I need everything on Michael Carter. Focus on his gambling debts and who he owes. On it. 3 days later, March 26th, I learned what desperation looked like. The hotel parking garage was supposed to be secure, but Michael had found a way in. 3 o'clock in the morning, according to my phone, when his pounding woke me, not on the door. He was in the hallway, but he was hitting the walls making noise. I triggered my recording app before opening the door. Michael looked like he'd aged 5 years and 3 days. Bloodshot eyes, 3-day stubble, clothes that had been slept in. The smell of whiskey hit me from 6 feet away. You're killing us, old man. He slurred, pushing past me into the room. Michael, you're drunk. Leave before I call security. Security? He laughed ugly and harsh. You think security matters? You know who Tony Torino is? I didn't, but I kept recording. Tony Torino collects debts, Robert, and he collects in blood when the money's not there. $380,000 due last month. But you knew that, didn't you? I know you stole my house to pay your gambling debts. Michael stepped closer. His breath was toxic. Accidents happen, Robert, especially to old men. Weak hearts, bad falls, disappeared completely sometimes, even in nice hotels. Is that a threat, Michael? It's a promise. Drop the charges. Unfreeze the accounts or you'll wish Jennifer had put you in the same trash home as your wife. The rage that hit me was volcanic. But I stayed still. The recording was everything. Get out. He left, but not before kicking over a lamp. Hotel security arrived minutes later. I'd texted them the moment he'd started pounding walls. They reviewed their cameras, took statements, called the police. Michael was gone, but everything was documented. Morales met me the next day at a scenic overlook in the McDowell Mountains. He handed me a folder thick with photos and documents. Your son-in-law is in deep, he said. Tony the Hammer Torino is old school Vegas mob. Officially, he runs a construction company. Unofficially, he's the most dangerous debt collector in 3 states. The photo showed Michael meeting with a man who looked like violence incarnate. Torino was huge, scarred, with dead eyes that had seen everything and felt nothing. There's more, Morales continued. Michael owes 3 casinos besides the Bellagio private games with businessmen who don't take IUs. Total debt is closer to $500,000. How long has this been going on? Years. But here's the interesting part. Jennifer's been signing loan documents, too. Except he pulled out another photo. I talked to 3 witnesses who say she's never been to these games, never met these people. Michael's been forging her signature, too. The irony was almost beautiful. The forger being forged. April 5th brought unexpected allies. Samuel Thompson called, his voice tight with controlled anger. Mr. Mitchell, we need to talk. Our title insurance company is investigating, but they're dragging their feet. My wife is devastated. We saved 20 years for this house. I understand, Mr. Thompson. You're victims, too. The thing is, we've learned something. Our real estate agent, Sylvia Chen, she and your daughter go way back. College roommates. She pushed us to close quickly. Said there were other offers. Now we know why. Gloria Thompson took the phone. Mr. Mitchell, we'll testify. We'll help however we can. We just want our money back and these people punished. Their lawyer, Christine Park, was young, hungry, and brilliant. She'd found connections between Jennifer and Sylvia going back years. Shared vacations, mutual investments, a pattern of suspicious real estate transactions. This isn't their first time, Park said when we met. I found 3 other properties with questionable sales patterns, all elderly owners, all quick cash sales below market value. April 10th, court ordered mediation. The mediator was a retired judge named Franklin, who'd seen everything and tolerated nothing. Jennifer arrived in a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, a choice that screamed either denial or defiance. Brennan, her lawyer, tried to control the narrative. My client was manipulated by her husband. She's a victim of domestic coercion. Michael exploded. Coercion? She planned the whole thing, showed me the trust documents, told me exactly how to. Brennan grabbed Michael's arm, but it was too late. You told me he was dying. Michael screamed at Jennifer. Said he'd never know. Said the Alaska trip was perfect timing. Security dragged Michael out, still screaming. Jennifer's mask finally slipped completely. She looked at me with eyes I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, empty. You were supposed to die on that trip, she said quietly. The boat captain was paid to have an accident, but you chose a different tour company last minute. The room went silent. Even Franklin looked shocked. Brennan was frantically trying to stop his client from talking, but Jennifer kept going. You always were lucky, Dad. My phone buzzed. Text from Harrison. Jennifer just withdrew $50,000 cash from an account we missed. Second text from Morales. Michael just met with Torino again. Torino didn't look happy. The pieces clicked. They weren't going to fight anymore. They were going to run. My phone rang. Unknown number. Nevada area code. The courthouse metal detector beeped at my knee replacement. Same as it had for 15 years. Officer Martinez waved me through with a nod. We'd known each other since the early 2000s, back when I tried cases here weekly. Jennifer arrived 10 minutes later with a new attorney, Sandra Chen, whose reputation preceded her like a bad smell. Chen defended the kind of people who thought laws were suggestions and ethics were for the poor. Mr. Mitchell, Chen said in the hallway, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Elder abuse accusations are serious. They can backfire. Behind her, Jennifer clutched her designer bag with trembling hands, avoiding my eyes. She'd lost weight, stress eating away at her from inside. Good. Harrison appeared at my elbow. She hired the dirtiest fighter in Phoenix, he whispered. Chen doesn't just bend rules, She breaks them. Prosecutor Dennis Murphy arrived next, his Irish face flushed with anticipation. He nodded to me, then to Harrison. We'd all worked this courthouse in better days. Now we were here for uglier business. Judge Walter Stone entered at 9 sharp. The Vietnam veteran pin on his lapel caught the light. He wore it every day. Had since 1975. Stone had no patience for thieves, less for those who stole from family. Jennifer's hands started shaking harder. Harrison presented the evidence methodically. Original trust documents, bank statements. The forensic analysis appeared on the courtroom screen. Dr. Chen testifying via secure video link. Every forged signature magnified, every fraudulent date highlighted. Stone leaned forward, studying the documents himself, his reading glasses sliding down his nose. Ms. Carter. Stone's voice could have frozen the desert. Your passport, please. Chen objected. Overruled. Chen objected again. Stone's glare could have melted steel. Your client is a flight risk counselor. The passport stays with the court. Jennifer's face crumpled. During recess, I headed for the bathroom. She followed, checking the hallway for witnesses before cornering me by the sinks. The fluorescent lights made her look skeletal, makeup running, desperation leaking through her perfect facade. I have $200,000 in cash, she hissed, untraceable. Take it and tell them you were confused. My phone recorded from my shirt pocket. You stole my retirement and call it love. Her face twisted into something I didn't recognize. You were supposed to love me unconditionally. Unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional theft. Jennifer, Michael has friends, dangerous friends. They know where you stay. So do the police. She grabbed my arm. Nails digging in. Why can't you just die like Mom did? Quiet and grateful for what we gave you. There it was. The truth beneath the performance. I pulled free and left her crying in that bathroom or pretending to cry. I couldn't tell anymore and didn't care. Murphy waited in the courthouse cafe. Coffee black, expression eager. I played him the recording on my phone. His smile widened with each word. Witness tampering, attempted bribery, and that bit about your wife. He shook his head. Consciousness of guilt. She just made my case. Let her think I'm considering it. I said, you want her confident? I want her careless. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo appeared. My hotel room door taken from the hallway. The message started loading. Your daughter says you won't listen to reason. Let me explain the stakes. 4 days had passed since Michael's text. I'd hired Tom Rodriguez, an off-duty Phoenix cop, to shadow me discreetly. Today I was driving to Jennifer's house to collect my tools. A meeting sheet arranged with an email dripping with fake concern. Dad, you left some things in the garage. Come get them before we donate them. The circular driveway hadn't changed. Neither had the perfect lawn that Michael paid someone else to maintain. Jennifer opened the door wearing tennis whites, though she hadn't played tennis since high school. Performance costume. Oh, good. You're here. Her voice carried across the neighborhood. Everyone, my father's here for his things. Mrs. Henderson was watering her roses. Mr. Patel walked his ancient beagle. The Chesterfield twins played in their yard. Jennifer had assembled an audience. Michael emerged shirtless despite the morning chill. Beer in hand at 10 o'clock. His belly had expanded since I'd last seen him. Stress eating or just giving up the pretense of fitness. The garage smelled like motor oil and broken promises. My tools lay scattered across the concrete floor, some obviously damaged. My father's hammer, the one he'd carried through World War II, had fresh dents in the handle. Jennifer watched me catalog each piece of destruction, her smile sharp as broken glass. Look everyone, my father, the charity case. She projected her voice like a community theater actress. Can't even afford storage. Michael accidentally knocked over my toolbox, sending wrenches clattering. Oops, clumsy me. I photographed everything with my phone. Jennifer's nervous laughter echoed off the garage walls. Maybe the shelter has room for you, Dad. They take seniors, right? Here's $20. Michael slurred, pulling a crumpled bill from his pocket. Buy yourself lunch, old man. Mrs. Henderson had stopped watering. Her expression shifted from confusion to horror as Jennifer picked up my military medals, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and tossed them onto the lawn like trash. These old things, who keeps this junk? The photo album landed next. Michael's foot accidentally crushing it. Pictures of Jennifer's first birthday scattered across the driveway. Her mother's smile, frozen in time, lay beneath his heel. This is shameful, Mrs. Henderson said, approaching. Mind your own business, Helen. Jennifer's mask slipped for a second, raw, ugly, showing through. I helped Mrs. Henderson with her groceries while Jennifer and Michael exchanged worried glances. Every neighbor was recording on their phones. The Chesterfield twins' mother had come outside, mouth open in shock. "What's funny about being homeless, Dad?" Jennifer's voice cracked slightly. I kept smiling, loading my damaged possessions into the rental car. Each destroyed tool was evidence. Each cruel word was testimony. They'd invited witnesses to their performance, not realizing they were casting jury members. "Thank you for witnessing this, Helen," I said quietly. "Robert, I'm so sorry about this." "What's that supposed to mean?" Michael stumbled forward, beer sloshing. I drove away with my father's broken hammer on the passenger seat. My phone rang immediately. Harrison's emergency tone. "Robert, you need to know something about the house." Jennifer's text arrived simultaneously. "Why were you smiling?" I pulled over, seeing both messages. Harrison's voice continued through the speakers. "It's not what we thought. The trust actually, money leaves footprints, and Michael had been tap dancing in wet cement for years." Vincent Morales' text arrived at 7:00 a.m. on May 20th, pulling me from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. The attached photo showed Michael at a warehouse in South Phoenix, flanked by Tony Torino and a mountain of muscle everyone called Big Eddie. Michael's body language screamed pray, shoulders hunched, hands shaking as he signed something. Time to accelerate everything. The hotel business center's ancient computers hummed like dying insects, but they'd serve my purpose. I created a new email account through a VPN that bounced my signal through 3 countries. The message to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division was clinical, precise, 40 years of legal training distilled into perfect anonymity. Jennifer's Cayman account screenshots, Michael's maze of LLCs, the $650,000 house sale proceeds that had taken interesting detours before reaching their supposed destination. The auto response came immediately. Case IRS 2025 AZ 4847 created. Thank you for reporting suspected tax fraud. Morales called while I was still at the computer. They're at Michael's office right now. My contact in building security is streaming this to me. Through his phone, I watched 3 men in 1,000 suits enter Phoenix Financial Plaza. Even through security footage, their purpose was obvious. Collection, not negotiation. Michael was visible through his office glass, pacing, gesturing wildly. 47 minutes. That's how long they stayed. When Michael emerged, his shirt was untucked, sweat stains visible even on the grainy footage. "He's going to the bank," Morales narrated as Michael's Porsche, soon to be repossessed, pulled into Wells Fargo, and he's coming out empty-handed. The accounts are frozen. Michael's desperate call to Jennifer came next, captured by Morales' surveillance. "Jen, they came to my office in front of my partners. The bank won't give me anything. Your dad has destroyed us." May 25th brought federal attention. IRS agent Dylan Ross looked younger than my son David, but his eyes held the hunger of someone building a career on big cases. We met in the federal building downtown, the air conditioning aggressive enough to hang meat. "Mr. Mitchell, your garage cleaning was quite productive," Ross said, spreading Jennifer's financial documents across his metal desk. "This matches patterns we've been tracking. Elderly targeting, systematic fraud, interstate commerce violations. I just found these papers and thought someone should see them," I said, maintaining the pretense. Ross smiled. He wasn't buying it, but he didn't care. "We've frozen 14 accounts so far. There's a property in Sedona we weren't aware of. Did your daughter mention that?" She hadn't. Another secret. Another betrayal. May 31st, Jennifer called, hysterical. Papers rustled in the background, drawers slammed. "The Cayman account is empty. $300,000 gone." Michael's voice, distant but clear. "It's not what you think." The sound of a slap, phone clattering, her voice rising. "You stole from me while I stole from you. Jen, the collectors, they knew about the account somehow. Liar. You've been stealing from me the whole time." The line went dead. I sat in my hotel room, listening to the silence, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. The criminals were eating each other. My phone rang again. Unknown number. Heavy breathing filled my ear. Then Michael's voice slurred and desperate. "Your daughter doesn't know everything about the trust, about her mother. Meet me." Sounds of struggle. Something breaking. Jennifer's voice sharp as winter. "Don't you dare contact my father. This is your mess, not his." The sound of Michael hitting something hard. A wall, floor, then nothing. 5 days passed before I saw either of them again. June 10th. The courthouse looked different with media vans surrounding it like carrying birds. Someone had leaked the story. Probably Ross building his reputation. Daughter steals dying father's home ran across the local news ticker. I wasn't dying, but accuracy had never been journalism's strength. Jennifer arrived in a borrowed suit that didn't fit right. Her designer wardrobe presumably sold or seized. No, Michael. A bench warrant would be issued for his absence. She looked smaller, older, like grief had been eating her from inside. When our eyes met, hers held a question she didn't have the courage to voice. Harrison had saved the revelation for maximum impact. Your Honor, he said, standing slowly theatrically. The defense has operated under a fundamental misunderstanding. May I present the original Mitchell Family Trust documents, established 1995. The projector displayed papers I'd kept hidden for 20 years. Jennifer leaned forward, squinting at the screen. The Mitchell Family Trust isn't just the house, Harrison continued. It encompasses 14 properties, various investment accounts, bonds, and commercial real estate holdings. Current valuation, approximately $3.2 million. Jennifer's face transformed. Disbelief, rage, then something like death. Her lawyer whispered frantically in her ear, but she wasn't listening. Judge Stone's voice could have frozen the desert. Miss Carter, you attempted to steal a single asset from a trust worth millions. I didn't. He never. Jennifer's voice cracked. I finally stood, surprising everyone, including Harrison. Your Honor, may I address my daughter? Stone nodded. The trust was your inheritance protection, Jennifer. Your mother and I established it when you were 16 after watching her parents lose everything to a con artist. Every safeguard, every complexity. It was all to ensure you and David would be secure. If you'd waited 15 months until your 40th birthday, you could have accessed your share freely. If you'd asked, I would have helped with Michael's debts instead. But you never told me because your mother made me promise. She knew you'd married Michael for the wrong reasons. Saw his nature before anyone else. She said if you knew about the money, he'd find a way to take it. She was right. Prosecutor Murphy stood. The state charges Jennifer Carter with elder abuse, forgery, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted murder for hire. That last charge was new. Ross had been busy. Your Honor, Jennifer's lawyer pleaded. My client needs time to arrange. Denied. Given the attempted flight with $50,000 in cash and the expired passport found in her possession, Miss Carter is remanded immediately. The bailiff approached with handcuffs. In that moment, Jennifer looked exactly like the 5-year-old who'd stolen cookies and blamed the dog. Caught, cornered, unable to comprehend consequences. But I'm your daughter, she said as the metal clicked around her wrists. That's why this hurts, I replied. They let her pass the cameras, past the microphones, past the life she'd built on lies. Her designer heels, the last pair she owned, clicked against marble like a countdown to the end. In the parking garage, exhaustion hit like a physical weight. 3 months of war had ended. Not with victory, but with necessary justice. My phone buzzed twice. Harrison. Michael found in custody. He's talking, trading information for reduced charges. The second message was from an unknown number. A photo loaded slowly. My old house. Afternoon sun painting it gold. The Thompsons stood on the porch waving, smiling like people who'd won the lottery. The caption began, Mr. Mitchell, we'd like to discuss insurance companies don't forgive. They systematically destroy those who cost them money. Harrison's conference room felt different on June 15. Instead of war planning, we were discussing resolution. 3 representatives from Fidelity Title Insurance sat across from the Thompsons and their lawyer, Christine Park. Margaret Chen, the lead adjuster, had the efficiency of someone who'd processed tragedy into spreadsheets for 20 years. This is the clearest fraud case we've handled, Chen said, sliding documents across the mahogany table. Full compensation plus damages, $725,000. Samuel Thompson's hand trembled as he reached for the papers. Gloria wiped her eyes with a tissue that had seen better moments. They weren't crying over money. They were crying over vindication over the months of uncertainty ending. We just wanted our retirement home, Gloria whispered. Chen's expression softened marginally. You'll have it. We'll recover our costs from the perpetrators through subrogation. Miss Carter and Mr. Carter will be paying us back for decades. Samuel shook my hand with both of his grip firm despite his age. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell, for fighting, for not letting them win. 5 days later, I sat in federal court watching Michael face his reckoning. Orange jumpsuit hanging on his diminished frame, wrist shackles clicking against the defendant's table. The IRS Criminal Investigation Division had been thorough. 18 months they'd requested, 18 months they'd get. Agent Ross testified with the dispassion of someone reciting grocery lists. Unreported gambling winnings from his lucky streak. 3 years ago, before the losses mounted, structured deposits designed to avoid bank reporting requirements. Money laundered through 14 shell companies with names like Desert Holdings LLC and Sunshine Ventures Corporation. Mr. Carter, the federal judge, and her voice cutting through Michael's visible trembling. Tax evasion undermines society's foundation. 18 months in federal custody, followed by 3 years supervised release. Michael's hollow eyes found mine across the courtroom. No anger there anymore, just the recognition of a man who'd gambled everything and lost. The U.S. Marshals led him away, his expensive lawyer already packing up, retainer exhausted. July 1st brought Jennifer's turn in state court. She'd lost weight, her borrowed business suit hanging loose, drugstore makeup unable to hide the shadows under her eyes. The prosecutor offered a deal. 2 years probation, full restitution, 500 hours community service, mandatory therapy. I accept responsibility, Jennifer said, her voice cracking like dried leather. I betrayed the person who loved me most. Judge Stone reviewed her lack of prior convictions, the letters from her employer, former employer now, describing years of good work before this madness. The gavel fell with finality. Restitution totals $1.20 $2 million, the prosecutor announced, payable over 20 years. Jennifer walked out in civilian clothes, but imprisoned by debt that would follow her past retirement age. No jail cell, but no freedom either. The auction happened July 15th. I didn't attend, but Harrison sent photos. Jennifer's house in Paradise Valley, the monument to their pretense, sold for barely enough to cover the mortgage. The Porsche, the Range Rover, the designer furniture, all gone to the highest bidder. An entire life liquidated in 90 minutes. Opening bid for lot 47. The auctioneer's voice echoed in the video Harrison sent. Custom bedrooms set from restoration hardware. Everything they'd built on stolen foundations collapsed into strangers' hands. My hotel phone rang that evening. The concierge's practiced voice. Mr. Mitchell, you have a visitor in the lobby. The elevator descent felt longer than 14 floors. Who would visit now? The media had moved on to fresher tragedies. The lawyers were paid and gone. Jennifer stood by the lobby fountain, holding an envelope with shaking hands. Not the Jennifer who'd stolen my house. Not the Jennifer who'd planned my death. This was someone else. Hollow-chicked, wearing Walmart clothes, holding herself like she expected to be hit. Dad, she started, her voice barely audible above the fountain's splash. I need to tell you the truth about Mom's death. The words hung between us like charged particles. I led her to the lobby sitting area, away from the concierge's curious glances. She sat on the edge of an overstood chair, envelope clutched like a lifeline. Michael started manipulating me during Mom's final months, she said, eyes fixed on her worn sneakers. He knew about the trust then. He'd gone through your papers while you were at the hospital every day. He said if I didn't help him, he'd make sure you spent everything on her care, that there'd be nothing left. Your mother's care was never about money. I know that now, but grief and greed, they twisted everything. Michael convinced me you'd live forever, that the trust would never benefit us, that we deserve something for our patients. August 1st, I turned my key in my original lock. The Thompsons had returned the house to me in better condition than they'd found it. New kitchen backsplash, xeriscaped garden that would survive any drought. Fresh paint throughout. They'd loved it properly briefly. Mrs. Henderson emerged first, carrying a casserole that smelled like the 1970s in the best way. Mr. Patel followed with his ancient beagle. The Chesterfield twins' mother brought cookies. The neighborhood had been watching, waiting. Welcome home, Mrs. Henderson said simply. Home felt different now, not violated, but transformed. Every room held memory and renewal simultaneously. The Thompsons had left a note. Thank you for fighting for what's right. This house has good bones and better karma now. August 10th brought a letter. Jennifer's careful handwriting on cheap paper. No return address. I'm working 2 jobs. Morning shift at Target, evening at Denny's. Living in a studio apartment in Glendale. It's honest work. I see now the house was never about property. It was about what I was willing to destroy to get it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just understanding. Your daughter, Jennifer, I read it 3 times, then filed it with the legal papers. Not ready for forgiveness, but acknowledging the attempt. The barbecue on August 15th wasn't planned. Neighbors just appeared with food, drinks, stories. We gathered in the backyard. The Thompsons had improved. Smoke from Mr. Patel's grill mixing with evening air. You handled this with such dignity, Mrs. Henderson said, her 3rd glass of wine making her philosophical. Most people would have just raged. Rage is expensive, I replied. Justice has better returns, they laughed, understanding that some wounds teach valuable lessons. August 25th, doorbell at dinner time. Jennifer stood on my porch, their porch, the one where she'd been raised, holding pay-ubs and an envelope. First restitution payment, she said, extending $200 in worn 20s. The Thompsons will get theirs next month. Calloused hands from restaurant work, drugstore shampoo, humility earned through labor. This wasn't the daughter who'd stolen from me or the child I'd raised. This was someone in between in transition. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she repeated. Just accountability. Call me when you've paid the Thompsons for a full year, I said. We'll talk then. She nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. Mom would be ashamed of what I became, but maybe proud of who you're becoming. She walked away with straighter shoulders than she'd arrived with. A neighbor child asked about the family photos I'd rehung in the hallway. I explained about choices and consequences, about how people can lose themselves and maybe find something better. That evening, I called Harrison about setting up education trusts. Not for Jennifer's future children, should she have them, but structured so they couldn't be touched by parents' greed. Some lessons need teaching only once. The phone rang again. The Thompsons calling from their new house in Sedona. They'd found peace there, they said. Their insurance settlement had bought them something smaller, but theirs completely. We talked about gardens, about second chances, about justice served. Looking out at the desert sunset, I thought about family, about blood and betrayal, about redemption earned through accountability. My father's tools sat cleaned and organized in the garage, waiting for projects that would build rather than destroy. Family isn't about blood or property. It's about choosing to do right when wrong is easier. Jennifer had chosen wrong, was paying for it, might someday choose better. Michael had chosen wrong and would pay longer. I had chosen justice over revenge, and that made all the difference. The house stood solid around me, walls that had seen love and loss, theft and recovery. Tomorrow, David would fly in from Seattle. We'd discuss the trust, how to protect it, how to ensure this never happened again. But tonight, I sat in my reclaimed home at peace with the price of justice and the possibility, just the possibility of redemption. Story 2. I arrived at my wife's law firm party and said my name. The staff looked confused. Your name is not here. I looked for my wife and asked her. She rolled her eyes. Did you really think you'd be invited? I smiled calmly. I understood perfectly, and I left. But in the middle of the ceremony, her phone started ringing nonstop. You know that feeling when you're about to walk into a room where you absolutely belong, but some cosmic joke decides you don't? Yeah. Welcome to my Tuesday night. I'm standing outside Hole & Barkley LLP, the glass palace where my wife basically lives. Adjusting my tie for the third time because apparently I still give a damn about looking presentable at these dog and pony shows. The firm's annual gala, black tie, champagne that costs more than most people's car payments, and enough legal eagles in one room to make the Supreme Court jealous. I push through those ridiculous revolving doors that probably cost more than my first apartment. And immediately I'm hit with that familiar cocktail of marble money and the faint scent of desperation masked by expensive cologne. The lobby stretches out like some modernist fever dream. All sharp angles and surfaces so polished you could perform surgery on them. There's this massive sculpture hanging from the ceiling that Sabrina once described to me as justice in motion. Personally, I think it looks like someone threw a bunch of metal scraps into a blender and called it art. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the guy who helped pay for this place. The check-in table sits dead center. Manned by Priya. Sweet kid. Probably makes more in a year than I did my first 5 years out of college, but she's got this nervous energy that tells me she's still trying to prove she belongs here, too. I walk up with the confidence of a man whose wife's name is literally on the building. Well, half the building, Holt & Barkley. You'd think that would count for something. Rowan Pierce, I say, flashing what I hope passes for a charming smile. I'm here for the gala. Priya's fingers dance across her iPad screen with the precision of a concert pianist. Once, twice, her eyebrows do this little furrow thing that immediately tells me everything I need to know. But I'm still holding on to hope because optimism is apparently my default setting. Even when life keeps serving me reality checks on a silver platter, she bites her lip. Never a good sign when someone's looking at a guest list and gives me that smile that customer service reps perfect when they're about to deliver bad news. I'm sorry, sir. Your name isn't on the list. For a second, I just stand there, not angry, not confused, just processing. Like when your computer freezes and you keep clicking things, hoping it'll unstick itself. Except the computer is my brain and the frozen program is my understanding of where I fit in this whole picture. I scan the lobby, taking in the scene like I'm seeing it for the first time. Partners in black tie cluster around cocktail tables, their laughter echoing off those pristine walls in a way that sounds rehearsed. Associates hover at the edges, nursing drinks and networking like their professional lives depend on it, which, let's be honest, they probably do. Everyone's dressed to impress. Everyone's playing their part in this elaborate theater of success. And there, right in the center of it all, like she was born to command a room, is Sabrina, my wife, draped in a silver gown that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. Surrounded by a semicircle of associates who hang on her every word like she's delivering the Sermon on the Mount instead of probably discussing billable hours or case strategy. She looks magnificent. She looks powerful. She looks like she belongs here in a way that I apparently don't. I make my way over, weaving through clusters of conversations about market trends and regulatory changes. Past the arrears table where someone's inevitably complaining about the catering budget while eating $50 appetizers. The closer I get to Sabrina, the more I can hear her voice, confident, authoritative, the voice of someone who's never doubted her place in the world. Sabrina, I say, gently interrupting whatever legal wisdom she's dispensing to her audience. Hey, there's been some kind of mistake. I'm not on the list. She turns to look at me and for just a split second, I see something flicker across her face. Not surprise, not concern, something else. Something that makes my stomach do a little flip. Then she rolls her eyes. Actually rolls her eyes like I'm some kind of inconvenient interruption to her evening. Did you really think you'd be invited? She asks, and her voice carries just enough volume that the associates around her can hear. Just enough edge that there's no mistaking this for playful banter. Now, here's the thing about moments like this. You know those moments when your whole world tilts just slightly off its axis and suddenly everything looks different. Sometimes your body reacts before your brain catches up. Sometimes you expect to feel heat, anger, that burning sensation in your chest that comes with humiliation. But what I feel instead is cold. Not the angry kind of cold. Not the bitter kind. Just clarity, like jumping into a mountain lake and suddenly being wide awake. I feel my chest cool, not burn. And you know what? I smile. Not the fake smile you paste on when you're trying to save face in front of people who don't matter. A real smile. The kind that comes when puzzle pieces finally click into place. When you finally understand the game you've been playing without realizing it. I understand perfectly. I tell her and I mean it. For the first time in months, maybe years, I actually do understand perfectly. I turn around and walk away. Not storming off, not making a scene, just walking past the sculpture that symbolizes justice in motion. Past Priya at the check-in desk who's pretending not to watch this little domestic drama unfold. Past all the partners and associates who are probably already mentally composing the office gossip they'll spread tomorrow through those ridiculous revolving doors and out into the night. The cold air hits my face like a slap, but a good kind of slap. The kind that wakes you up when you didn't even realize you've been sleepwalking. I stand there on the sidewalk for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of the gala continuing without me, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as the party goes on. Nobody's looking for me. Nobody's wondering where I went. The machine just keeps running smooth as ever. I pull out my phone and scroll to a contact I haven't called in weeks. Celine Park, my attorney, my oldest friend, the one person in my life who's never asked me to be smaller than I am, never suggested I dim my light so someone else could shine brighter. She picks up on the second ring. Rowan, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I tell her. And for the first time in longer than I care to admit, I actually mean it. Selena, we proceed exactly as planned. There's a pause on the other end of the line, then a sound that might be a chuckle, might be satisfaction, might be both. Are you sure? I look back at the glowing windows of Hole and Barclay, at the celebration I'm not invited to, at the life I've been funding and supporting and cheering from the sidelines, at the woman in the silver gown who just made it crystal clear where I stand in her hierarchy of importance. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. So, there I am, sitting in my car outside the Palace of Legal Eagles, and my brain decides this is the perfect time for a little trip down memory lane because apparently humiliation makes you nostalgic. Who knew? I lean back in the driver's seat and let myself remember how this whole beautiful disaster started. Picture this. Me, 26 years old, thinking I knew everything about everything, walking into Ollie's pub on a rainy Thursday night in March. The kind of night where the beer tastes better because your bones are cold and the whole world feels like it's washing clean outside. And there she was, Sabrina Holt. Though back then, she was just Sabrina Morrison, a second-year law student at State who looked like she hadn't slept in approximately 3 weeks. She was hunched over a corner table surrounded by enough law books to stock a small library, picking at a plate of nachos that had gone cold about an hour ago. Her hair was doing that thing where it looks like she'd been running her hands through it all day. And she had this intense concentration face that made her look like she was trying to solve world hunger through contract law. I should have known right then that this woman was going to turn my life upside down. But did I listen to that little voice in my head? Hell no. Instead, I walked over and did what any red-blooded American male would do when faced with a beautiful woman stress-eating nachos at midnight. I offered to buy her another beer. "I can't afford another beer," she said without looking up from her textbook. "I can barely afford these nachos. And before you offer to buy it for me, I should probably mention that I'm surviving on instant ramen and the kind of panic that makes your eye twitch." I liked her immediately. Not because she was gorgeous. Though, let's be honest, she was, but because she was real. No pretense, no games, just a woman who was honest about being broke and stressed and probably living on 3 hours of sleep and pure caffeine. So naturally, I fell for her like a house of cards in a windstorm. That was the beginning of what I now recognize as the most expensive relationship in the history of modern romance. Not expensive because she was high maintenance. Sabrina wasn't the type to demand designer handbags or weekend trips to the Hamptons. No, this was expensive because I was an idiot who confused love with investment banking. When she mentioned that her financial aid had fallen through and she was looking at a tuition gap that would make a grown man weep. Guess who stepped up with his savings account? When she needed money for bar prep courses that cost more than my car. Guess who worked double shifts at the freight company to make it happen? When she graduated and landed that entry-level position at what was then just Barkley and Associates before they brought Sabrina's sharp legal mind and my connections into the fold. Guess who refinanced his condo to help cover her student loan payments so she could focus on making partner instead of worrying about debt? If you guessed some romantic fool named Rowan Pierce, congratulations, you win a prize. The prize is the knowledge that love can make otherwise intelligent people do spectacularly stupid things with their financial security. But here's the thing. I wasn't being stupid. At least I didn't think I was. I was being supportive. I was being the kind of partner who believes in his woman's dreams and puts his money where his mouth is. I was investing in our future, in the life we were going to build together once she made it through those grueling first years at the firm. I kept 2 jobs during her bar prep period. Days at Kestrel Freight managing logistics for companies that moved everything from auto parts to industrial equipment. Nights doing freelance consulting for smaller shipping operations that needed someone who could speak both warehouse and boardroom. I lived on coffee and determination, watching her study until her eyes went bloodshot, bringing her dinner when she forgot to eat, rubbing her shoulders when the stress made her neck seize up like a rusty gate. And you know what? I was proud of her. Ridiculously, stupidly proud. When she passed the bar exam, I probably celebrated harder than she did. When she landed that position at Barkley and Associates, I took her out to the fanciest restaurant I could afford, which admittedly wasn't saying much after all those tuition payments, and listened to her talk about her 5-year plan to make partner. That's when I made what I now realize was my first real mistake. I started making introductions. See, working in logistics means you know people. You know the guys who move stuff, the companies that need stuff moved, and the businesses that insure all that stuff while it's being moved. You know, general counsels and risk managers and procurement directors, people who occasionally need legal services and are willing to trust a recommendation from someone they've worked with. So, when Sabrina mentioned that the firm was looking to expand their corporate client base, I opened my contact list like it was Christmas morning. Kestrel Freight, where I'd been working for 3 years and had built relationships with everyone from the dock workers to the C-suite. Ironvale Metals, a mid-sized operation that was growing fast and needed legal guidance on expansion contracts. North Star Bio, a pharmaceutical logistics company that was drowning in regulatory compliance issues and desperately needed someone who understood both the science and the shipping. I made those introductions because I believed in Sabrina's abilities, because I knew she was brilliant and capable and exactly the kind of lawyer these companies needed. Because I wanted to see her succeed, and succeed she did. Those clients I brought her, they became the foundation of what eventually became Hole and Barkley LLP. When old man Barkley decided to bring Sabrina on as a named partner, it was largely based on the client portfolio she'd built. A portfolio that, if we're being honest, I'd handed her on a silver platter. Did I ask for equity in the firm? No. Did I ask for my name on any letterhead? Hell no. Did I even ask for a formal acknowledgement of my role in building those relationships? You're getting the picture. All I wanted was a seat in the room, a place at the table during the celebrations. Recognition that I was part of this success story, not just some guy who happened to be married to the star. I wore thrift store suits to partner dinners and tried not to feel underdressed next to lawyers who spent more on ties than I made in a week. I clapped too loudly when Sabrina argued her first motion before Judge Morales. A procedural hearing that she turned into a masterclass in preparation and presentation. I learned the names of every associate, every paralegal, every person who mattered in Sabrina's professional world because I wanted to be the kind of husband who supported his wife's career. I just wanted to belong in the life we were building together. Was that really too much to ask? Sitting in my car now watching the gala continue without me, I'm starting to think maybe it was. You know how they say the devil's in the details? Well, turns out the devil's also in the tiny little cuts that don't seem like much until you realize you're bleeding out from 1,000 paper wounds. That's exactly how Sabrina's transformation from supportive wife to whatever the hell she became happened. One microscopic dismissal at a time. It started so small I almost missed it. We're talking about the kind of thing you brush off because making a big deal about it would make you look petty and insecure. Like when your spouse corrects the way you hold a wine glass at a holiday mixer. Picture this. December 2nd years ago, Hole and Barclay's annual holiday party. Back when they still invited spouses and pretended to care about work-life balance. I'm standing next to Sabrina nursing a glass of what I'm pretty sure was a $40 Pinot Noir, trying to make small talk with some senior associate who keeps checking his phone every 30 seconds. Normal party stuff, right? Apparently I was holding my wine glass like some kind of barbarian. Rowan, Sabrina said, her voice carrying that particular tone that women perfect when they want to correct you without making it seem like they're correcting you. Hold it by the stem, not the bowl. You're warming the wine now. Any reasonable person would think. Okay, helpful tip about wine etiquette. No big deal. But it was the way she said it. The way she glanced around to make sure nobody had noticed my apparent breach of civilized behavior. The way she subtly repositioned herself so she was standing just slightly apart from me. Like my wine-holding incompetence might be contagious. But hey, I'm a reasonable guy. I adjusted my grip and moved on with my life. Then came the Latin incident. God, I still cringe thinking about it. We're at dinner with some potential clients, a biotech company looking for regulatory guidance. And the conversation turns to some legal precedent I'd actually heard about through my work with North Star Bio. So naturally, I chime in, trying to be part of the conversation like a good husband should. Oh yeah, I said. That's related to that old doctrine. What's it called? Residential IPS quitter, except I pronounced it like recipolo quitur instead of whatever the correct Latin pronunciation was supposed to be. Close enough for government work, right? Wrong again. Sabrina actually snickered, not laughed, not chuckled, snickered like I was some amateur who'd wandered into a conversation above his pay grade. Then she smoothly corrected my pronunciation while explaining the concept to the clients, effectively erasing my contribution to the discussion entirely. Her friend Kara Winters, this sharp-tongued associate who always looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe, leaned over after dinner and delivered what I now realize was the first rail warning shot. You're sweet, Rowan, she said. But maybe leave the legal talk to the lawyers. You're more provincial. Provincial, like I was some country bumpkin who'd stumbled into the big city with hay in my hair and mud on my boots. Never mind that I'd been working with corporate legal departments for years. Never mind that I understood contracts and liability and risk management better than half the associates at their firm. I was provincial. I laughed it off because that's what you do when someone insults you with a smile. You laugh it off and pretend it doesn't sting. But the hits kept coming, each one a little sharper than the last. Sabrina started asking me to arrive late and leave early at firm events. Not explicitly, of course. She was too smart for that. Instead, she'd mention that cocktail hour was really just for the lawyers to catch up on cases and suggest I show up after dinner. Or she'd point out that the after party at whatever trendy bar they'd picked was probably going to be pretty boring for you and hint that I might want to head home early. The message was clear. You don't belong here during the important parts. Then she stopped introducing me as my husband and started going with Rowan. He's in logistics. Like my profession was my entire identity and that identity was somehow lesser than hers. I became Rowan, the logistics guy, instead of Rowan, my partner in life who helped build this career you're all benefiting from. The worst part, she started telling me not to talk to clients unless they spoke to me first. Think about that for a second. I was the guy who brought half these clients to the firm in the first place. I had relationships with these people that went back years. But suddenly, I needed permission to have a conversation with someone I'd known since before Sabrina even passed the bar exam. It's not personal, she explained when I finally worked up the nerve to ask about it. It's just that clients need to see clear professional boundaries. They need to know who's their lawyer and who's not. Who's not? That's what I'd become, the guy who's not. When North Star Bio renewed their contract, a six-figure deal that represented a significant chunk of the firm's revenue, Sabrina forgot to invite me to the celebration dinner. Forgot? Like the guy who introduced her to the client in the first place was just some minor detail that slipped her mind. I found out about it 3 days later when Kara posted pictures on social media. There's Sabrina raising a toast. There's Trent Barkley looking pleased as punch. There's half the firm's partnership celebrating a victory that literally would not have existed without my connections. And there's me sitting at home watching Netflix and wondering when I became invisible. At home, things weren't much better. Our shared calendar, The one we'd used to coordinate our lives for years, started filling up with depositions and client retreats and partner meetings. My name was never on any of it, not even for the social events that spouses typically attended. It's just easier if I handle the firm calendar separately, Sabrina explained when I mentioned it. Most of these things are work-related anyway. Work-related, like our marriage existed in a separate universe from her career instead of being the foundation that made her career possible. My savings account kept shrinking too. Temporary firm costs that I didn't question because I trusted her, because I believed we were building something together. Bar association dues, continuing education seminars, professional wardrobe updates, client entertainment expenses that somehow fell outside the firm's budget. Always temporary, always necessary, always coming out of my pocket. I told myself that love was investment, that marriage was about supporting each other's dreams, even when it cost you. That the temporary sacrifices would pay off in the long run when we were both successful and happy and living the life we'd planned together. But here's the thing about investments. They're supposed to have terms, clear expectations about returns, timelines, what happens if things don't work out as planned. I had set none of those terms. I just kept writing checks and hoping for the best. Sitting in my car now, I can't help but laugh at my own stupidity. All those little dismissals, all those tiny cuts, all those moments when I should have spoken up and set boundaries, I let them slide because I thought I was being the bigger person. Turns out being the bigger person just makes you a bigger target. 3 days before the gala, Sabrina dropped the final bomb while I was making coffee in our kitchen. You know, that fancy kitchen with the marble countertops that I'd helped finance, but apparently had no say in decorating. She was sitting at the breakfast bar scrolling through her phone with that particular brand of focused indifference that successful people use when they're about to deliver news they know you won't like. The partner ceremony is for image, she said without looking up from whatever urgent legal matter was demanding her attention at 7 a.m. You don't fit it. Just like that. No preamble, no gentle let-in, no attempt to soften the blow, just a casual announcement delivered with the same tone she might use to mention that we were out of milk or that she'd be working late again. I stood there holding my coffee mug, one of those ridiculous oversized ones that says "World's Greatest Husband" that she bought me for our second anniversary back when she still pretended to think I was great, and tried to process what she just said. You don't fit it. Not. It might be awkward. Or maybe it's better if you skip this one. Not even. I'd prefer if you didn't come. Nope. You don't fit it. Like I was a square peg trying to squeeze into a round hole or a discount suit at a black tie event. What exactly does that mean? I asked because sometimes when people say something unbelievably hurtful, your brain needs them to clarify just how hurtful they really meant it to be. She finally looked up from her phone and I could see that little crease between her eyebrows that appeared whenever she had to explain something she considered obvious to someone she considered slow. It means that this event is about the firm's reputation, about presenting the right image to clients and potential clients, about showing that we're serious, professional, successful people who deserve to be trusted with million-dollar cases. And I don't fit that image. You work in logistics, Rowan. You're a good man and you're great at what you do, but you're not. She paused, searching for the right words. You're not partner material. You don't have the background, the education, the social polish that these events require. Partner material. Social polish. I felt something shift in my chest, like a tectonic plate finding a new position after years of pressure. The social polish that comes from growing up with money. You mean that's not what I said, but it's what you meant. She set down her phone and gave me that look. The one that said she was being patient with me, but her patience had limits. Look, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm being practical. These people judge everything. How you dress, how you speak, who you know, what you studied, where you went to school. They're looking for reasons to doubt us. To think we're not worth their 7-figure retainers. I can't afford to give them any ammunition. I can't afford. Not we can't afford. I can't afford. So, I'm ammunition now. You're putting words in my mouth. No, I'm just repeating them back to you. That's when she played the card I should have seen coming from a mile away. God, Rowan, why do you have to make everything about you? This is the biggest night of my career. I'm about to become a named partner in one of the most prestigious firms in the state. Can't you just be supportive for once instead of making this into some personal drama? Supportive for once. Like the previous 5 years of financing her dreams and making introductions and sitting quietly in corners while she climbed the ladder I'd helped build were just figments of my imagination. But here's the thing about moments like this. Sometimes clarity comes not with a flash of lightning, but with the simple recognition that you've been living in the dark for so long you'd forgotten what light looked like. I didn't argue with her. I didn't raise my voice or point out the irony or launch into a speech about everything I'd sacrificed for her career. Instead, I did something that probably surprised both of us. I went upstairs, shaved with the expensive shaving cream she'd bought me for Christmas, put on my best tux, the one I'd worn to exactly 3 firm events before being quietly disinvited from the rest, and told her I'd see her at the gala. "Rowan, we just talked about this." "We did, and I heard you. But here's the thing, Sabrina. Marriage is also presence. It's showing up for each other, especially on the big nights. So, I'm going to show up." I could see her calculating, trying to figure out whether it was worth having a fight about or if she could just handle it at the event itself. She chose option B, which tells you everything you need to know about how she really felt about me being there. "Fine, but please don't embarrass me. Don't embarrass me." Like my mere existence at her celebration was a potential source of humiliation. That night, I called Celine Park. You know how some people have that one friend who always tells them exactly what they need to hear, even when it's not what they want to hear? Celine is that friend. We've known each other since college back when she was studying law. And I was figuring out that business logistics was actually pretty fascinating when you got into the nitty-gritty of how things move from point A to point B. She'd watched my relationship with Sabrina from the beginning, and she'd been the only one brave enough to point out that my investment strategy in Sabrina's career might not be as smart as I thought it was. "You need to protect yourself," she'd said about a year ago. "Set up some safeguards, some leverage, some way to make sure you're not left holding an empty bag if this goes sideways." At the time, I'd brushed her off. Sabrina and I were partners. We were building something together. We didn't need safeguards and leverage and contingency plans, but Selena, being both a good friend and a damn good lawyer, had helped me set up those protections anyway, just in case. The master services contract with Kestrel Freight that gave me personal discretionary authority over their choice of outside counsel. The equity stake in the tech company that provided document management services to half the law firms in the city, including Hole and Barkley. The building subleases for the 14th floor event space that had become the firm's go-to venue for client entertainment, held by my LLC, Pier 17 Holdings, a little corporate entity that Sabrina had forgotten existed. All quiet, all legal, all perfectly legitimate business arrangements that I'd entered into during the years when I was still trying to be helpful instead of just present. "Are you sure about this?" Celine asked when I explained what had happened at the gala. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Once we activate these, there's no going back. She's going to know exactly what you're capable of." "Good. It's about time somebody did, because here's what I'd finally figured out. All those years of being supportive and accommodating and understanding hadn't earned me respect. They'd earned me contempt. All those years of making myself smaller so Sabrina could seem bigger had just convinced her that I was in fact smaller. Well, it was time to remind everyone exactly how big I could be when I needed to be. So, there I am, standing on the sidewalk outside the glass palace of Legal Eagles, breathing in that crisp night air like it's the first real oxygen I've had in years. The revolving doors keep spinning behind me, carrying well-dressed lawyers in and out of their exclusive little world. But, I'm done being dizzy from trying to keep up with their rotation. I pull out my phone and open up my text messages. 3 contact threads that have been sitting dormant for months, waiting for exactly this moment. 3 simple messages that are about to turn Sabrina's perfect evening into a very educational experience about the difference between partners and props. The first text goes to Marta, General Counsel at Kestrel Freight. Marta and I go way back. She was actually the one who taught me that the best business relationships are built on trust and clear communication, not fancy degrees and expensive suits. She's the kind of lawyer who gets her hands dirty, who understands that moving freight isn't just about logistics. It's about people trusting you to get their stuff from here to there without drama. I type one word: redirect. That's it. One word that activates a clause in our master services agreement that I negotiated 2 years ago when Kestrel was expanding their legal needs. A clause that gives me personally the discretionary authority to redirect all of Kestrel's outside counsel work with 30 days notice. A clause that Sabrina had thought was quaint when I'd mentioned it in passing, like I was playing dress up in the grown-ups business world. Kestrel represents about 40% of Halt and Barkley's monthly revenue. Funny how quaint clauses can have such non-quaint consequences. The second text goes to Rafi Danish, CEO of Nexus Legal Systems, the tech company that provides document management software to half the law firms in the city. Rafi's one of those brilliant guys who built his business from his garage and never forgot what it felt like to be underestimated by people in expensive suits. I'd invested in Nexus 3 years ago when they were still a startup looking for seed money. Not a huge investment. I'm not exactly swimming in venture capital over here, but enough to give me a 5% equity stake and a seat on their advisory board. Enough to have a say in certain business decisions, including enforcement of contract terms when clients fall behind on their integration fees. Enforce. I type. That one word is going to flip Holt and Barclay's entire document management system into read-only mode until they settle some outstanding fees that have been mysteriously under review for the past 6 months. Fees that Sabrina had assured me were just a temporary accounting issue that would be resolved any day now. The third text goes to Lydia Chun, building manager for the corporate complex that houses the 14th floor event space. Lydia runs that building like a Swiss watch. Everything on time, everything by the book, everything documented in triplicate. She's also the person who deals with my LLC Pier 17 Holdings, which holds the sublease for the event space that Holt and Barclay uses for all their big client entertainment nights. Invoice clause. I type that particular clause is my personal favorite. It's buried deep in the sublease agreement, written in the kind of legal language that most people skim over because they assume it's just standard boilerplate. But Selena helped me craft it specifically to address reputational breaches and conduct inconsistent with the professional standards expected of subby events. Turns out publicly humiliating the primary leaseholder's representative at a gala might just qualify as conduct inconsistent with professional standards. And the remedy for such conduct, an immediate search charge equal to 3 times the standard event fee plus termination of future booking privileges. Sabrina had argued that our arrangement was just a handshake between friends. But handshakes aren't contracts, and I've always been better with contracts than handshakes. I hit send on all 3 messages, slip my phone back into my pocket, and drive exactly 2 blocks away to a spot where I can see the windows of the ballroom, but won't be obvious to anyone inside. I'm not looking for a fight. I'm looking for truth. And sometimes truth needs a little help making itself heard. The interesting thing about perfectly planned events is how quickly they can become perfectly planned disasters when a few key variables change. It's like watching a complex machine that runs beautifully until someone removes a couple of crucial bolts and suddenly everything starts making very different kinds of noises. I sit in my car and wait, not because I'm enjoying the anticipation. Okay, maybe I'm enjoying it a little, but because I want to see how long it takes for reality to penetrate the bubble of Sabrina's perfect evening. About an hour later, as I'm listening to some classic rock station and wondering if this is what midlife crisis feels like, I can see movement in the ballroom windows. Sabrina's at the podium now, probably giving her speech about everyone who mattered and how grateful she is for all the support that made this moment possible. I wonder if she'll mention the logistics guy who helped make half of this success possible. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess no. That's when her phone starts ringing. Even from 2 blocks away, I can see the shift in her body language when she glances at her phone and sees whatever emergency is demanding her attention. Then it rings again and again. Her wrist buzzes, probably her Apple Watch alerting her to urgent emails. Trent's watch starts buzzing too. I can see Priya hurrying toward the dais with that particular kind of urgent walk. That means we have a situation. In my mind, I can practically hear the conversation happening in that ballroom. The frantic whispered conferences, the urgent phone calls to IT departments and account managers, the dawning realization that their biggest client has just activated a redirect clause that nobody thought would ever be used. That their document management system has suddenly become about as useful as a chocolate teapot until they settle some mysteriously overdue fees. That their favorite event space has just invoiced them for conduct that somebody apparently found professionally inappropriate. I imagine Sabrina's face as she processes what's happening. The confusion first, then the growing understanding, then the moment when she realizes exactly who has the power to fix all of these problems at once. The best part about having leverage isn't using it. It's the moment when the other person realizes you have it. My phone buzzes. Text message from an unknown number, but I recognize the tone immediately. Fix this now. I look up at the ballroom windows one more time, then put my car in drive. Some conversations are better had in person. The next morning, I wake up feeling like I've been hit by a truck full of clarity. You know that feeling when you finally stop hitting your head against a wall and suddenly realize how much your head doesn't hurt anymore? Yeah, that's exactly where I am right now. My phone has been buzzing since about 6 a.m. with increasingly frantic messages from Sabrina. But I've got more important things to do than manage her crisis. I've got some housekeeping to take care of. I make myself a proper breakfast for the first time in months. Real eggs, actual bacon, toast that doesn't come from a package, and sit down at my kitchen table with my laptop and a stack of documents that I've been meaning to review for way too long. Time to remove some safety nets that I never should have provided in the first place. Letter number 1 goes to Harbor Trust Bank. Attention Commercial Lending Department. This is the big one. The financial nuclear option that I've been pretending didn't exist because acknowledging it would mean acknowledging just how deep I'd let myself get into this mess. Dear Harbor Trust, I am writing to formally terminate my personal guarantee on business loan account number 47829BL issued to Sabrina Holt for partner capital requirements at Holt & Barclay LLP. Here's the thing about personal guarantees that most people don't understand until they're neck deep in other people's debt. They're like co-signing for a teenager's car loan, except the teenager is a successful attorney and the car costs about as much as a small house. When Sabrina needed to come up with her partner buy-in, the chunk of change that made her a named partner instead of just another associate grinding billable hours, the bank wanted some additional security beyond her projected earnings. Enter good old Rowan, the supportive husband with decent credit and a paid-off condo, willing to put his financial neck on the line so his wife could achieve her dreams. The loan was for 18 months, just long enough for her partnership income to stabilize and prove to the bank that she could handle the payments on her own. That 18 months ended about 2 years ago. But did anyone bother to remove my guarantee once Sabrina was pulling in partner-level money? Did anyone think to mention that I was still legally responsible for her business debt, even though I apparently wasn't professional enough to attend her business celebrations? Of course not. Why would they? I was the safety net that nobody wanted to think about until they needed it. Well, guess what? Safety nets work both ways. They catch you when you fall, but they also get removed when the person holding them decides they're done being taken for granted. I print the letter on good paper, the kind that says, "This is not a joke." Sign it with my fanciest pen and set it aside for certified mail. Let's see how quickly the bank moves to replace my guarantee when they realize their backup plan just walked out the door. Letter number 2 goes to American Express Business Services. This one's almost funny in how petty it could seem to an outside observer, but petty is just another word for paying attention to details that other people ignore. Please be advised that effective immediately, I am canceling all automatic payments from my personal accounts for American Express Business Card account #3785-421896-74001 held by Sabrina Hole DBA Hole and Barkley LLP. That business card has been running through my checking account for about 3 years now. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of charges that add up when you're not paying attention. Client dinners that somehow fell outside the firm's entertainment budget. Travel expenses for conferences that were partially personal. Professional wardrobe updates that needed to happen right away before the firm's next billing cycle. Always temporary, always necessary, always coming out of my account because it was easier than dealing with the firm's accounting department. You know what's easier? Not paying for other people's business expenses when you're not even invited to their business events. I calculate the running total while I'm writing the letter. 3 years of temporary charges adds up to about the cost of a decent used car. A car that I apparently bought for someone who thinks I'm too provincial to be seen with in public. The third letter is the one I'm most looking forward to writing. This one goes to Iron Vale Metals and North Star Bio. The two biggest clients I'd personally introduced to Holt and Barkley back when I still believed that helping my wife succeed was the same thing as succeeding together. Dear Mr. Harrison and Ms. Patel, I write addressing the general counsels at both companies. I hope this letter finds you well. As you know, I have had the pleasure of working with your organizations for several years in various logistics and consulting capacities. It has been my privilege to introduce you to the legal services provided by Hole and Barkley LLP. And I am gratified that those relationships have proven mutually beneficial. This is where things get interesting. See, most people assume that once you make an introduction, your role in that relationship is done. You bring two parties together, they hit it off, and you fade into the background while they do business together. But that's not actually how professional relationships work in the real world. In the real world, relationships are maintained by the people who built them. Trust transfers through personal connections, not corporate letterhead. When a general counsel trusts a vendor recommendation, they're trusting the person who made the recommendation, not just the company being recommended. However, I wanted to inform you that I will now be working with an independent firm, Moreno & Shaw, to provide legal services that better align with my consulting practice. Maria Moreno and David Shaw have built a boutique practice that specializes in exactly the kind of pragmatic client-focused representation that I believe will serve your organizations well. I'd had lunch with Maria Moreno about 6 months ago. Brilliant lawyer, Harvard educated, but she'd grown up in a family that ran a small trucking company before she went to law school. She understood that business wasn't just about billable hours and partner retreats. It was about real people solving real problems for other real people. She also understood that when you're building a practice, you treat the people who bring you clients like partners, not inconveniences. Moreno & Shaw has expressed great interest in working with organizations like yours, and I believe you will find their approach both professional and refreshingly collaborative. I will be happy to facilitate introductions at your convenience. The beautiful thing about this letter is that it doesn't actually say anything negative about Hole and Barkley. It doesn't even explicitly say that I'm pulling my recommendations. It just mentions that I'm now working with a different firm and would be happy to make introductions. But here's what every general counsel in America will understand when they read between those carefully crafted lines. The guy who brought us this relationship is now working with someone else. And he's suggesting we might want to consider working with someone else too. Corporate loyalty is a funny thing. Companies don't really have relationships with other companies. People have relationships with people. And when the person who built the relationship suggests that there might be better options available, smart businesses listen. I print all 3 letters on my best letterhead, sign them with my most confident signature, and drive to the post office to send them certified mail. Not because I'm trying to be dramatic, but because certified mail creates a paper trail, a record of exactly when these safety nets were removed and by whom. Sabrina calls while I'm standing in line at the post office. I let it go to voicemail. Then she calls again and again. By the time I get back to my car, I have 7 missed calls and 3 voicemails that I'm pretty sure consist mostly of various creative ways to call me vindictive. I listen to exactly one of them. "You vindictive child." Her voice hisses through my phone speaker. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you understand that you're destroying everything we built together? Everything we built together?" Interesting choice of words from someone who apparently built it all by herself and just needed me to stay out of the way. I delete the voicemail without listening to the others. For the first time in years, I have nothing to say to my wife. Turns out silence really does feel like oxygen when you've been suffocating for this long. 2 days later, I wake up feeling like I've been sleeping for the first time in years instead of just lying in bed waiting for morning. There's something liberating about cutting ties. Like finally taking off shoes that have been pinching your feet so long you'd forgotten what comfortable felt like. I make my coffee, read the news, and decide it's time for the conversation that's been building toward this moment for months. I put on my charcoal suit. Not the one I wore to firm events where I try to blend in, but the one I wear when I need people to remember that I belong in whatever room I am walking into. It's a good suit, well tailored, the kind that says I may work in logistics, but I'm nobody's sidekick. I take my time with a tie, make sure my shoes are polished, and check myself in the mirror. Today, I'm not going to hold in Barkley as Sabrina's husband. I'm going as myself. The lobby feels different when you're not worried about fitting in. Still all marble and glass and intimidating architecture, but now it just looks like an expensive office building instead of some temple where I'm not worthy to worship. I walk up to the security desk where Ozzy's working his morning shift. "Hey, Mr. Pierce," he says with a genuine smile. "Haven't seen you around in a while." Ozzy and I had talked once about his newborn daughter, how she was keeping him and his wife up all night, how expensive formula was getting, how amazing it was to watch this tiny person discover the world for the first time. The kind of conversation you have with someone when you actually see them as a human being instead of just part of the scenery. "Hey Ozzy, how's little Sarah doing? Still keeping you guys up at night? Getting better?" He grins. "She's sleeping through the night about half the time now. My wife says I should appreciate it while it lasts because the terrible twos are coming." Smart woman. "Listen, I need to get upstairs. Is conference room availability still handled through Mia?" "Yeah, she's at the main reception desk now. I'll call up and let her know you're coming." See, that's the thing about treating people like they matter. They remember you when it counts. Ozzy doesn't ask why I need a conference room or whether I have an appointment. He just makes the call because we're 2 guys who've had actual conversations about real life. Mia, Sabrina's assistant, looks nervous when I approach her desk. Not the kind of nervous you get when you're worried about someone, but the kind you get when you're caught between competing loyalties and you're not sure which side is going to win. "Hi, Mr. Pierce," she says, glancing around like she's hoping someone will appear to handle this situation for her. "How can I help you?" "I need a conference room for about an hour. Something with good natural light if possible." She checks her computer screen and I can see her weighing her options. Protocol probably says she should check with Sabrina before booking me a room. Common sense probably says that the husband of a named partner shouldn't need permission to use an empty conference room. Self-preservation probably says she doesn't want to be in the middle of whatever's happening between us. "Glass 3 is available," she says finally. "It has the best view of the city." "Perfect. Can you ask Sabrina and Trent to meet me there in about 10 minutes? Tell them it's important." She nods and reaches for her phone. I head to Glass 3 to wait. Conference rooms at high-end law firms are designed to intimidate. Glass 3 is no exception. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a table that could seat 12, but somehow makes 2 people feel isolated, chairs that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The kind of room where million-dollar deals get made and careers get destroyed. I take a seat at the head of the table, spread out 3 manila folders in front of me, and wait. Not anxiously, not nervously, just wait. For the first time in our entire relationship, I'm the one setting the terms of the conversation. Sabrina and Trent arrive exactly 10 minutes later, Sabrina's wearing her armor, a black suit that probably costs more than my car payment. The kind of power outfit that's designed to remind everyone in the room who's in charge. Trent's got his game face on, too. All pressed shirt and intimidating presence. They sit across from me like we're negotiating a hostile takeover instead of having a conversation about marriage and business relationships, which when I think about it, maybe we are. Trent starts talking before they're even settled in their chairs. Whatever game you're playing with our vendors ends now, Rowan, this is business, not some personal vendetta. I slide the first folder across the table. You're absolutely right, Trent. This is business. This is the Document Management Services Agreement between Nexus Legal Systems and Holt & Barkley. Page 7, Section 12, Subsection C, Outstanding Integration Fees that have been under review for approximately 18 months. I slide the second folder. This is the sublease agreement for the 14th floor event space. Page 15, Clause 47. Conduct inconsistent with professional standards with remedies including immediate search charge and termination of booking privileges. The third folder lands in front of Sabrina, and this is the Master Services Agreement between myself and Kestrel Freight with full discretionary authority over outside counsel selection, signed, witnessed and filed with their corporate office 3 years ago. Trent opens the first folder and starts reading. I can see his expression change as he processes what he's looking at. These aren't games or pranks or emotional outbursts. These are contracts, legal documents with actual terms and real consequences. These aren't games. I continue, keeping my voice level and professional. They're contracts that you've benefited from for years while pretending I didn't exist. Business relationships that I built and maintained while being told I wasn't partner material. Sabrina's jaw flexes. That little tell she has when she's trying to control her temper. Why, Rowan? Why are you doing this? It's a good question. Maybe the only question that matters. Because you invited my introductions, my credit, my signature, my silence. Just not me. Because for 5 years, I've been an investor in your success without any equity and your respect. Because you made it clear that I don't fit your image. And I've decided you're right. Trent looks up from the contracts. What do you want? I want what everyone wants in business, Trent. I want terms, clear expectations, mutual respect. I want to be treated like a partner instead of a problem. And if we don't agree to your terms, I lean back in my chair and look out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below. All those people down there living their lives, making their deals, building their relationships on foundations of mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. Then you'll discover what it's like to run a law firm without the relationships that I brought to the table, without the financial backing that I provided, without the vendor agreements that I negotiated. You'll find out whether your success was really all about your legal brilliance, or whether some of it might have had to do with the logistics guy who wasn't partner material. The room gets very quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when everyone suddenly understands exactly how much power has shifted and in which direction. Sabrina finally speaks, and her voice is softer than I've heard it in months. What do you want from me, Rowan? I want you to decide whether you want a husband or a silent investor, because I'm done being both. You know what they say about throwing stones in glass houses? Well, turns out when you're dealing with a law firm that's basically one giant glass house, even the smallest pebbles can cause some pretty spectacular damage. By 5 o'clock that evening, the legal press had picked up the story, and by 6, my phone was buzzing like an angry hornet's nest. Anchor client leaves Holt & Barkley after partner gala, reads the headline in Legal Tribune. Not exactly Pulitzer Prize material, but you've got to love how fast news travels in the incestuous world of corporate law. Apparently, when a 40% revenue client suddenly redirects their business, people notice. Who would have thought? My phone starts ringing around 6:15. First call comes from some reporter at American Lawyer magazine who probably Googled Rowan Pierce and found my LinkedIn profile in about 30 seconds. Mr. Pierce, this is Jessica Chun from American Lawyer. I'm calling about the situation with Kestrel Freight and Holt & Barkley. Would you be willing to provide a comment on the circumstances surrounding your decision to redirect their legal services? I let it go to voicemail, then another call, then another. By 7:00 p.m. I've got reporters from Legal Week, the National Law Journal, and something called Corporate Counsel Today, all wanting to hear my side of the story. Here's the thing about being on the other side of a news story for the first time in your life. Everybody wants to make you the villain or the hero, and nobody's particularly interested in the truth, which is usually somewhere in the boring middle. They want drama, conflict, betrayal, revenge. Basically, a soap opera with billable hours. But I don't give them what they want. I don't give them anything. Selena, being the excellent attorney and better friend that she is, had prepared for this exact scenario. She issues exactly one statement, probably the most diplomatically worded "go screw yourselves" in the history of legal press releases. Our client wishes the firm well. He is merely aligning his business relationships with organizations that demonstrate mutual respect for all parties involved. That's it. No accusations, no drama, no juicy quotes about marital discord or professional slights. Just a polite way of saying that respect is a two-way street and some people apparently need GPS to find it. But here's where things get interesting. Because while I'm maintaining radio silence, other people aren't being quite so diplomatic. Inside Holton Barkley, the partners are apparently having what you might generously call strategic discussions and what you might more accurately call a complete meltdown. I know this because Mia, sweet, nervous Mia, who booked me that conference room, sends me a text around 8 p.m. Just wanted you to know that some of us remember all the times you helped out. This isn't right. 20 minutes later, Kara Winters, Sabrina's sharp-tongued ally and my personal candidate for most likely to make snide comments at a funeral, posts something on her Instagram story that she probably thinks is subtle, but actually lands like a brick through a window. Some people can't handle when others succeed. She writes, over a picture of what looks like expensive wine in what's probably an expensive restaurant. Disgruntled spouses who try to sabotage their partner's career are the worst kind of toxic. #blessed #partnership #success. Now, Kara apparently forgot a few important things when she decided to take her passive-aggressive show public. First, she forgot that the internet never sleeps and has a very long memory. Second, she forgot that I've been part of this firm's ecosystem for 5 years, which means there are a lot of photos and emails and documents floating around that tell a very different story than the one she's trying to spin. Within 2 hours, someone, and I honestly have no idea who, but God bless them, starts posting receipts in the comments of her Instagram story. Photos from previous firm events where Sabrina is literally thanking me for making tonight possible, screenshots of emails where I'm CC'd as the client liaison for major deals, copies of invitations to firm celebrations that explicitly mention my contributions to successful closings. My personal favorite is a photo from about 18 months ago where Sabrina is presenting some client with a commemorative plaque and I'm standing right next to her with a big smile because I'd been the one who spent 3 days in a warehouse in Cleveland making sure their discovery materials got processed correctly. The caption on the original post, which someone helpfully screenshots, reads, "None of this would have been possible without my amazing husband's expertise and connections." Amazing husband's expertise and connections. Funny how that transforms into disgruntled spouse when the amazing husband finally gets tired of being treated like hired help. The internet being what it is, Carrara's post gets ratioed into oblivion. People start commenting with fire emojis and issue responses and within about 4 hours she deletes the whole thing and makes her account private. But screenshots are forever and the story has already grown legs. What started as anchor client leaves law firm becomes law firm partner's husband built their client base then gets excluded from celebration. Then it becomes the man behind the success story speaks by not speaking. Then some blogger at Above the Law writes a piece called When Your +1 Built Your Career But Isn't +1 material that gets shared about 1,000 times. The narrative doesn't become a scandal. Exactly. It becomes something more dangerous for a firm that depends on reputation. It becomes symmetry. The story of someone who gave everything to build something and then got told they didn't belong in the thing they'd built. The kind of story that makes potential clients wonder what kind of people they're really doing business with. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in my living room eating Chinese takeout and watching the whole thing unfold from a comfortable distance. My phone keeps buzzing with text messages. Some from reporters I ignore, some from old colleagues expressing support, and a few from people I barely know who apparently think this whole situation is hilarious. Around 10 p.m., I get a text from Maria Moreno at Moreno & Shaw. Iron Vale and North Star both called today. Very interested in discussing a transition. Also, you're officially the most popular man in legal gossip circles right now. How does it feel to be famous? I text back like I'm finally getting credit for work I did years ago. The best part about the whole media circus is that I don't have to manage it, defend it, or explain it. The facts speak for themselves. And the facts are pretty simple. I built relationships. I got results. I supported success. And then I got told I wasn't good enough to celebrate that success. Sometimes the truth is the best revenge because it doesn't require any embellishment. At 11 p.m. my phone buzzes one more time. Sabrina texting from what I assume is Damage Control Central. This has gone too far. We need to talk. I look at the message for about 30 seconds, then turn off my phone and go to bed. For the first time in months, I sleep like a baby. They say that consequences have a way of arriving in their own time, but apparently nobody told them that sometimes they show up early and bring friends. Over the next 2 weeks, I get to watch the domino effect of my little rebellion play out in real time. And I've got to admit, it's better than any premium cable drama series. The first domino falls exactly 48 hours after my glass conference room performance. Harbor Trust Bank, those lovely folks who've been enjoying my personal guarantee on Sabrina's partner loan for way longer than originally planned, sends a very formal letter to both of us explaining that they'll need to restructure the lending arrangement now that the original guarantor has withdrawn his support. Banking language is a beautiful thing when you know how to read between the lines. Restructure the lending arrangement translates roughly to "we still want our money, but now we're going to charge you a lot more for the privilege of borrowing it because we no longer have your husband's excellent credit score to fall back on." Sabrina's new loan comes with an interest rate that's about 3 points higher than what she was paying when I was backing her play. Not enough to bankrupt her, but enough to make her monthly payments feel a lot less comfortable. Enough to make her think twice about those impromptu shopping trips to Nordstrom and those weekend spa retreats that used to appear on our joint credit card statements. The quarterly partner draws at Holt and Barclay start shrinking too, though that takes a little longer to manifest. See, when you lose 40% of your monthly revenue overnight, you can't just absorb that loss by cutting back on office supplies and cheaper coffee in the break room. You've got to make real adjustments to real budgets, which means real cuts to real paychecks. Kestrel Freight doesn't just redirect their business to Moreno and Shaw. They do it with the kind of efficiency that makes other clients pay attention. When a company that's been loyal to a firm for 3 years suddenly jumps ship, other companies start asking questions. Not hostile questions, just the kind of prudent business questions that smart executives ask when they see patterns they don't understand. Maria Moreno handles the transition like the consummate professional she is. No trash-talking Holt and Barclay. No dramatic announcements about superior service, just quiet competence and the kind of personal attention that reminds clients why they chose to work with someone in the first place. Iron Veil Metals follows Kestrel's lead within a week. Their general counsel, a sharp woman named Janet Harrison, who's been in corporate law longer than I've been alive, calls me personally to discuss the transition. "I want you to know," she tells me, "that our decision isn't based on any dissatisfaction with the legal work Holt and Barclay provided. They're competent attorneys, but business relationships are built on trust and mutual respect. And when I see how they treated the person who brought us together, it makes me question their judgment in other areas." Janet's a straight shooter who doesn't waste words. So, when she says she's questioning their judgment, what she means is that she's wondering what other important relationships they might be taking for granted. Smart executives don't like working with people who can't manage their own internal dynamics. North Star Bio takes a little longer to make their move, but when they do, it's even more definitive. They don't just redirect their routine legal work. They pull their entire regulatory compliance contract, which represents about 15% of Holt and Barclay's total revenue. Their reasoning is elegantly simple. If the firm can't maintain professional relationships with the people who facilitate their business development, how can they be trusted to maintain the kind of long-term regulatory relationships that keep pharmaceutical companies out of FDA trouble? The document management system situation gets resolved, but not without some expensive lessons learned. Nexus Legal Systems flips the system back to full functionality after Holt and Barclay pays not just the outstanding integration fees, but also a late payment penalty that probably costs more than most people's annual salary. Rafi Danish is nothing if not thorough about contract enforcement. Business is business, he tells me when I call to thank him for his professionalism throughout the whole mess. You pay your bills on time, you get full service. You don't pay your bills on time. You get exactly what you pay for. It's not personal, it's just math. The 14th floor event space situation is my personal favorite resolution. Pier 17 Holdings, my little LLC that apparently nobody at Holt and Barclay bothered to investigate when they started using the space, terminates their future event privileges for what the contract very specifically defines as reputational breach inconsistent with the professional standards expected of subless events. The termination comes with a search charge that's exactly 3 times the standard event fee, plus a very polite explanation that future bookings will not be accepted from organizations that demonstrate conduct incompatible with the mutual respect and professional courtesy that this venue seeks to maintain. Lydia Chun, the building manager, handles the whole thing with the kind of bureaucratic precision that would make a Swiss train conductor weep with joy. No drama, no personal animosity, just a thorough application of contractual terms that nobody apparently thought would ever be enforced. The real beauty is that none of this feels like revenge. It just feels like business. The kind of business that happens when you treat contracts like they actually mean something and when you stop pretending that personal relationships don't matter in professional settings. About 10 days into this new reality, I'm sitting in my kitchen drinking my morning coffee and reading the business section of the newspaper like a normal human being when my phone rings. Sabrina's name pops up on the caller ID and for the first time in weeks, I actually consider answering it. I let it go to voicemail, then listen to the message about 20 minutes later. "Rowan, her voice sounds tired in a way I haven't heard since her bar exam prep days. I know you're angry and I know I screwed up, but this has gone beyond making a point. The firm is hemorrhaging money. The partners are panicking and I'm spending more on loan payments than I'm bringing home. We can fix this if we just sit down and talk like adults. Please call me back. I saved the message, but don't call back. Not yet. That evening around 11 p.m., which, let's be honest, has always been Sabrina's preferred time for difficult conversations because she thinks I'm more pliable when I'm tired. She texts me from what I assume is her office because she's apparently still there at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. We can fix this. Come home. Home. Interesting word choice. The condo that I bought and she redecorated. The place where I pay the mortgage and she decides what goes on the walls. The space where I've been walking on eggshells for months, trying not to embarrass her with my provincial presence. I look around my current living situation. A furnished apartment in a decent neighborhood that doesn't require me to pretend to be someone I'm not. Clean lines, comfortable furniture, no trophies for achievements I wasn't allowed to celebrate. No stack of bills for other people's business expenses on the kitchen counter. No constant reminders of how much money I've spent supporting dreams that apparently don't include me. It's quiet here. Not the oppressive quiet of being ignored, but the peaceful quiet of not having to justify your existence every time you walk into a room. No, I type back just that one word because sometimes the simplest answers are the most complete ones. For the first time in years, I sleep through the night without waking up at 3 a.m. wondering if I've done enough, given enough, sacrificed enough to earn my place in my own life. The answer, apparently, is that the question was wrong from the beginning. You don't earn your place in your own life. You just live it. And I'm finally ready to start living mine again. 2 days later, I get a call from David Shaw at Moreno & Shaw. They want to talk about bringing me on as a client relations partner, not a lawyer, but the guy who speaks fluent logistics and freight and can translate those languages into courtroom when necessary. We've been watching how you handle business relationships, David tells me. And we like what we see. You understand that trust is built through consistency, not just competence. You know that treating people with respect isn't just good manners, it's good business. We think you'd be a valuable addition to our team. For the first time in months, someone is offering me a position based on what I bring to the table, not asking me to minimize what I bring so someone else can look better. When can we start talking specifics? I ask. The conversation lasts about an hour and by the end of it, I have a job offer that includes equity participation, input on business development strategy, and a title that actually reflects what I do instead of what I'm not. They value what I bring. They say my name in rooms and mean it. They understand that logistics guy isn't a limitation. It's a specialization that brings real value to legal services. Imagine that. 3 weeks after the gala where I learned I didn't fit the image. I'm sitting in a conference room at Moreno & Shaw reviewing contracts for client relationships that I'm helping to build instead of relationships that I'm being excluded from. Maria Moreno looks across the table at me and smiles. Welcome to the team, partner. Partner, not in the legal sense. I'm not a lawyer and don't pretend to be one, but in the real sense, the sense that matters. Someone who contributes, who belongs, who gets credit for the work they do, and respect for the value they bring. It's amazing how good that word sounds when someone means it. 6 months later, I'm standing by the river at 7 a.m., watching the sunrise paint the water gold while I catch my breath after a 3 meters run. There's something almost poetic about starting your day by moving forward under your own power. Choosing your own pace, picking your own route, no meetings to accommodate, no schedules to work around, no need to make myself smaller so someone else can feel bigger. Turns out when you stop spending all your energy managing other people's crisis, you have enough left over to take care of yourself. Who would have thought? I've been living in my own space for 6 months now. Not the furnished apartment where I crashed after the gala, but a real place that I chose and decorated and pay for without having to justify every purchase to someone who thinks my taste is too provincial for their image. It's a 2-bedroom condo in a neighborhood that's more working professional than aspiring socialite with a kitchen that's actually designed for cooking instead of looking good in architectural magazines. The second bedroom has become my home office, equipped with the kind of technology setup that would make a logistics nerd weep with joy. Multiple monitors, a printer that actually works when you need it to, and enough desk space to spread out contracts and shipping manifests and client files without having to clear space for someone else's legal briefs. This morning, like every morning for the past 4 months, I'm headed to the offices of Moreno & Shaw, where I hold the title of Senior Partner for Client Relations and Business Development. It's a mouthful of a title that basically means I'm the guy who speaks warehouse and freight dock and suite with equal fluency, translating business problems into legal solutions and legal solutions back in a business language that real people can understand. Maria Moreno and David Shaw turned out to be exactly what they seemed like during that initial conversation. Smart lawyers who understand that the best legal practice isn't just about knowing the law. It's about understanding the businesses and the people who need legal services. They built their firm on the radical concept that client relationships are partnerships, not transactions, and that the person who brings the client to the table deserves to stay at the table. Revolutionary thinking in the legal world. Apparently, my office has a window that overlooks the city instead of a parking garage. My name is on the door in actual letters instead of being conspicuously absent from guest lists. When clients come for meetings, I'm introduced as Rowan Pierce, our senior partner for client relations. Instead of Rowan, he's in logistics. Small differences that add up to the difference between belonging and being tolerated. Kestrel Freight has been thriving under Moreno and Shaw's representation. Marty Canero, their general counsel, sent me a bottle of excellent whiskey last month with a note that said, "Thank you for reminding us that business relationships should be built on mutual respect. Best decision we've made in years." Iron Veil Metals brought us 3 new clients through referrals. Companies that were impressed by the seamless transition and the personalized attention that comes from working with a firm that treats every relationship like it matters. Janet Harrison has become something of an unofficial ambassador for our services, which is the kind of word-of-mouth marketing that money can't buy. North Star Bio has been our biggest success story. Their regulatory compliance work has expanded into a comprehensive legal partnership that covers everything from FDA submissions to international shipping regulations. Last week, they signed a 5-year exclusive contract that represents more annual revenue than I used to make in 3 years at my old logistics job. The beautiful irony is that I'm doing essentially the same work I was doing before. Building relationships, facilitating communication between different worlds, helping businesses solve problems. But now I'm getting credit for it instead of being told to stay in the background while someone else takes the spotlight. David Shaw knocked on my office door yesterday afternoon with a proposal that would have seemed like science fiction 6 months ago. "We're thinking about expanding," he said. "Opening a second office, maybe in Chicago or Atlanta. We want someone to head up business development for the new location. Interested in being trusted with major business decisions. In having my expertise valued instead of dismissed, in being offered opportunities instead of being told I don't fit the image. Yeah, you could say I'm interested." My phone buzzes while I'm reviewing contracts for a new client. A mid-size manufacturing company that needs help navigating some complex environmental regulations. Text message from an unknown number, but I recognize the area code. It's the same one that Holt and Barclay uses for their main office line. "I'm sorry you felt excluded." Felt that word sits there on my phone screen like a paper cut that won't heal. Not "I'm sorry I excluded you" or "I'm sorry for how I treated you." "I'm sorry you felt excluded." Like my perception of being systematically dismissed and diminished was just a misunderstanding, a failure of communication, an overreaction to perfectly reasonable professional boundaries. I stare at the message for about 30 seconds, then archive it without responding. Some conversations aren't worth having, especially when the other person is still trying to rewrite history instead of acknowledging it. The thing about feeling excluded is that it requires someone to actively do the excluding. Feelings don't exist in a vacuum. They're responses to actions, to patterns, to the accumulation of small moments that add up to big truths. When someone consistently treats you like you don't belong, eventually you feel like you don't belong. Funny how that works, but here's what I've learned over the past 6 months. The best revenge isn't grand gestures or dramatic confrontations or public humiliation. The best revenge is building a life where you don't need to be on anyone's list to belong. I delete the text and get back to work. Real work. Work that matters. Work that gets recognized and valued and compensated appropriately. Work that doesn't require me to make myself invisible so someone else can shine brighter. Maria stops by my office around lunchtime with updates on 3 potential new clients and a grin that tells me she's got good news to share. Remember that pharmaceutical logistics company that contacted us last month? They want to move forward with a comprehensive legal partnership, regulatory compliance, shipping contracts, international trade law, the whole package. They specifically asked for you to be their primary point of contact. Why me specifically? Because, and I quote, "Rowan Pierce is the only person we've met who understands both the legal side and the business side of what we do. He doesn't just give us legal advice. He gives us business solutions that happen to involve legal advice. Business solutions that happen to involve legal advice." I like that description a lot better than provincial or not partner material. That afternoon, I have lunch with Celine Park, my oldest friend, my attorney, and the person who saw this train wreck coming from about 5 miles away. We meet at a bistro downtown that specializes in the kind of food that tastes good instead of the kind that photographs well for social media. "You look different," she says after we order. Lighter somehow, Like you've been carrying around a weight for so long, you forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. I feel different, more like myself, if that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. You spent 5 years trying to be the kind of person who deserved to be included in someone else's vision of success. Now you're just being the kind of person who creates your own success. Selena's always been good at cutting through the noise and getting to the heart of things. It's what makes her an excellent attorney and an even better friend. Any regrets? She asks. I think about it for a minute. Really think about it. Do I regret the 5 years of supporting Sabrina's career? The money I spent, the connections I made, the effort I put into building something that I thought we were building together. No, I say finally, I regret how it ended, but I don't regret what I did. I believed in someone I loved, and I acted on that belief. The fact that she didn't value what I brought to the table doesn't mean I was wrong to bring it. And now I'm working with people who do value what I bring to the table. It's amazing how much easier life gets when you stop trying to convince people to appreciate you and start working with people who already do. We spend the rest of lunch talking about her cases, my new clients, and the general absurdity of people who think that professional success gives them license to treat others poorly. It's the kind of conversation you can only have with someone who's known you long enough to remember who you were before you started doubting yourself. That evening, I'm back in my condo, cooking dinner for one, and actually enjoying the process instead of seeing it as a chore to get through before the next crisis demands my attention. I've got music playing, a glass of wine breathing on the counter, and a salmon fillet that's going to be perfectly prepared because I can take my time with it. My phone rings around 8 p.m. Sabrina's name pops up on the caller ID for the first time in about 2 months. I consider letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity gets the better of me. Hello, Sabrina. Rowan, her voice sounds different, less commanding, more uncertain. How are you? I'm well. How are you? I'm managing. The firm is stabilizing. We've brought in some new clients to replace the ones we lost. Things are getting back to normal. Normal. Interesting word choice for a situation that involved losing nearly half their revenue and having to restructure multiple financial arrangements. I'm glad to hear it. There's a pause. The kind of pause that happens when someone is trying to figure out how to say something they don't really want to say. I've been thinking about what you said about wanting to be treated like a partner instead of a problem. I think maybe I lost sight of how much you contributed, how much you still contribute. Contributed. Past tense. That's not what I meant, isn't it? Another pause. Longer this time. I miss you, she says finally. I miss us. I miss having someone who understands the business side of what I do. Someone who can translate between my world and the real world. Someone who can translate between my world and the real world. Not someone she loves. Not someone she respects. Not someone she wants to build a life with. Someone who can perform a useful function in her professional ecosystem. I understand. I tell her and I mean it. But I'm not a translator, Sabrina. I'm not a bridge between your world and the real world. I live in the real world and I found people who value that instead of seeing it as something that needs to be managed or hidden or apologized for. We could try again. We could do it differently this time. We could, but I don't want to. The words come out easier than I expected without anger or bitterness or the need to explain or justify. Just a simple statement of fact. I don't want to go back to being smaller than I am so someone else can feel bigger than they are. I hope you find what you're looking for. I tell her, I hope you build the kind of life that makes you happy. I just won't be part of it anymore. After I hang up, I finish cooking my dinner, pour myself another glass of wine, and sit down at my kitchen table with a book I've been meaning to read for months. Not a business book or a self-help guide or something designed to make me more useful to other people. Just a novel that looked interesting when I walked past the bookstore last week. It's good to have time to read novels again. It's good to have evenings that belong to me instead of to someone else's emergency. It's good to live in a space where I don't have to justify my presence or apologize for taking up room. I'm not angry anymore. Anger requires energy that I'd rather spend on building things than tearing them down. I'm not bitter because bitterness is just disappointment that's been allowed to ferment, and I'm not disappointed anymore. I'm just free. Free to be exactly who I am, exactly where I am, exactly when I want to be there. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough. Story 3. My wife's family invited me to a fancy restaurant to celebrate our anniversary. I arrived but the room was empty. On the table sat divorce papers and a note. We found out you're infertile. The family line ends with you. Get out. I signed the papers and calmly ordered steak. They had no idea what was coming next. Chapter 1, The Foundation. Blake Morrison stood in his workshop, methodically cleaning the blood from his knuckles with industrial-grade solvent. The abandoned warehouse echoed with the distant sounds of the city, but inside silence reigned supreme. 3 months ago, he had been a different man, a trusting husband who believed in the sanctity of marriage and family bonds. Tonight, he was something else entirely. Blake had built his fortune through demolition and construction, starting with nothing but a sledgehammer and an unwavering work ethic. His company, Morrison Demolition, had grown from a one-man operation to controlling half the major tier-1 contracts in the tri-state area. What people didn't realize was that demolition taught you more than just how to tear things down. It taught you how to rebuild from the ground up, how to plan every detail, and most importantly, how to make sure nothing was left standing when you were done. Ashley Morrison had been the perfect wife on paper. Beautiful, charming, from a wealthy family that had welcomed Blake despite his blue-collar origins. The Peaton family had old money, the kind that came with expectations and traditions stretching back generations. Ashley's father, Gregory Peaton, owned a chain of luxury hotels across the East Coast. Her mother, Patricia, was a socialite who measured worth in bloodlines and bank accounts. Their marriage had started with genuine love, or so Blake had believed. Ashley had seemed different from her family, less concerned with status, more interested in building something real together. For 7 years, they had tried to conceive, spending hundreds of thousands on fertility treatments, specialists, and alternative therapies. Blake had endured every test, every procedure, believing they were partners in their struggle. The truth had come 3 months ago, not through any dramatic revelation, but through a simple oversight. Ashley had left her laptop open and Blake had seen an email thread between her and her sister discussing the plan to keep him thinking he was the problem while she and Kyle Hoffman, Gregory's business partner and family friend, continued their 5-year affair. Kyle Hoffman was everything Blake wasn't. Ivy League educated, born into privilege, the kind of man who had never worked with his hands, but somehow convinced everyone he was indispensable. He specialized in high-end real estate development, often partnering with the Pimpton hotels to create luxury resort destinations. Kyle was married to Rebecca, a quiet woman who seemed perpetually overshadowed by her husband's larger-than-life personality. The fertility issue was a masterful deception. Ashley had been secretly taking birth control while publicly supporting Blake through his infertility treatments. The plan, according to the emails, was to wait until Blake's assets were properly entangled with the family businesses, then divorce him for failing to provide an heir and marry Kyle after he divorced Rebecca. The family money would stay clean, and Blake would be left with a small settlement, grateful for the scraps. But Blake Morrison wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat gracefully. He had spent 3 months planning, using every resource at his disposal, every connection he had built over 15 years in business. The construction industry was tight-knit, and favors were currency. More importantly, demolition required permits, inspections, and relationships with city officials who trusted Blake's word implicitly. He had quietly placed surveillance equipment throughout their shared properties, hired private investigators to document Ashley and Kyle's affair, and most crucially began mapping out every aspect of their lives, their routines, their weaknesses, their fears, and their dependencies. Blake had learned that revenge, like demolition, required precise planning and perfect execution. Tonight's dinner was supposed to be his humiliation. The moment when the Peaton family would cast him aside and claim victory. They had prepared for a broken man who would sign the papers quietly and disappear. Instead, they would get something far more dangerous. A man who had spent months preparing for war. Blake finished cleaning his hands and walked to the wall where he had mounted photographs, documents, and detailed timelines. Red string connected various points, creating a web that looked like the work of either a brilliant strategist or a madman. Perhaps there wasn't much difference between the two. The restaurant reservation was in 2 hours. Blake smiled as he looked at his reflection in the industrial mirror he had mounted on the workshop wall. He looked the same as always, broad shoulders, calloused hands, the kind of face that had seen hard work and honest labor. But his eyes held something new, something that would have sent chills down Ashley's spine if she had bothered to really look at him in the past 3 months. He pulled on his best suit, the one Ashley had bought him for their 5th anniversary, and checked his watch. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The Pimptons and Kyle thought they were about to witness Blake's downfall. Instead, they were about to attend their own funeral dinner. They just didn't know it yet. Chapter 2. The Execution. Palazzo Rosso was the kind of restaurant where billionaires went to be seen spending money. Blake arrived exactly on time. His expression carefully neutral as the maitre led him to the private dining room the Patants had reserved. The space was elegant mahogany walls, crystal chandeliers, and a single table set for one. Blake surveyed the room with the practiced eye of a man who understood structural integrity. The soundproofing was excellent, the walls thick enough to muffle conversation, perfect for what he had planned as his next move, though not for the reasons his soon-to-be ex-family might expect. On the table sat a manila envelope and a handwritten note in Ashley's precise script. Blake read it aloud to the empty room, his voice echoing slightly. "We found out you're infertile. The family line ends with you. Get out." He laughed. A genuine deep sound that held no humor whatsoever. Blake opened the envelope and spread the divorce papers across the white tablecloth. The terms were exactly what he had expected. Minimal alimony, no claim to Pemberton family assets, and a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent him from discussing the marriage publicly. Gregory Pimpton's lawyers had done thorough work, creating an agreement that would leave Blake with roughly 10% of what he had brought into the marriage. The waiter appeared as if summoned by Blake's presence. "Will anyone else be joining you this evening, sir?" "No," Blake replied, signing the papers with deliberate care. "I'll be dining alone tonight. I'd like your finest steak, medium rare, and a bottle of your most expensive wine. Money is no object. This is a celebration." As Blake waited for his meal, he pulled out his phone and sent a single text message to 5 different numbers. "It's done. Phase 2 begins now." The steak arrived. Exactly as ordered, and Blake ate with genuine enjoyment. The wine was exceptional, and the ambience was perfect for reflection. He thought about Ashley, probably at Kyle's penthouse apartment right now, celebrating what she believed was her victory. He thought about Gregory and Patricia, likely toasting their successful manipulation of the blue-collar outsider they had never truly accepted. They had made one crucial mistake in their assessment of Blake Morrison. They had confused his respect for hard work with weakness, his loyalty with stupidity. Blake had never been weak. He was simply patient. And patience combined with the right resources could accomplish remarkable things. Blake finished his meal and left the signed papers on the table along with a $500 tip for the staff. As he walked toward the exit, he paused to speak with the maitre. "Please ensure Mrs. Morrison receives a message when she inevitably calls to check on tonight's outcome. Tell her that her ex-husband thoroughly enjoyed his last supper, and he's looking forward to tomorrow's breakfast." The confusion on the man's face was exactly what Blake had hoped for. By morning, Ashley would receive that message and spend the day wondering what it meant. Blake believed in psychological warfare. The anticipation of revenge was often more devastating than the revenge itself. Outside the restaurant, Blake's phone buzzed with confirmation messages from his team. Marcus Chun, his most trusted foreman, had confirmed that the surveillance equipment at Ashley and Kyle's various locations was functioning perfectly. Detective Ray Volov, a childhood friend who now worked private security, had verified that all documentation was properly filed with the appropriate authorities. Lisa Rodriguez, Blake's lawyer, had confirmed that the counterwork was ready for filing first thing Monday morning. But the most important confirmation came from Tony Russo, Blake's demolition specialist, and the closest thing he had to a brother. Tony had spent 10 years in the military before joining Blake's company, and his text message was brief. "All charges placed. Building scheduled for tomorrow. They'll never see it coming." Blake smiled as he walked to his truck. The Pembertons and Kyle Hoffman thought they had won by forcing him to sign papers in an empty restaurant. They had no idea that while they were celebrating, Blake was already 3 steps ahead, preparing to tear down everything they cared about with the same precision he used to demolish buildings. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Chapter 3, The First Tremors. Blake's alarm clock went off at 5 a.m., the same time it had every morning for 15 years. But this Monday was different. This was the first day of his new life and the first day of their destruction. His first stop was the courthouse where Lisa Rodriguez was waiting with a mountain of paperwork. Lisa was a shark in the legal world. The kind of attorney who could find loopholes in ironclad contracts and turn weaknesses into weapons. She had been working around the clock since Blake first approached her 3 months ago. "Good morning, Blake," Lisa said, her smile predatory. "I trust your dinner went well." "Perfect," Blake replied. "Are we ready?" Lisa spread documents across her conference table like a general planning a military campaign. "More than ready. First, the nullification petition. Turns out marriage contracts signed under fraudulent circumstances such as one party secretly using birth control while both parties undergo fertility treatments can be legally challenged. We're not just asking for divorce. We're asking the court to declare the marriage never legally existed." Blake nodded. He had hoped for this outcome when he first gave Lisa the evidence of Ashley's deception. Second, Lisa continued, the property dispute. Since the marriage was based on fraud, Ashley's claim to any assets acquired during the marriage becomes legally questionable. That includes the house, the vacation property, and most importantly, her stake in Morrison Demolition, and the Peton connection. Here's where it gets interesting. Lisa's eyes gleamed. "Gregory Pimpton co-signed several of your business loans over the years, ostensibly as a gesture of family support. But if the marriage is nullified due to fraud, and if we can prove that the Pimptons were aware of Ashley's deception, those loan agreements become contracts signed under false pretenses. Blake felt the first warm glow of satisfaction. Meaning Gregory Peaton could become personally liable for millions in business debt he thought was safely secured by family relationships, and Kyle Hoffman as his business partner is connected to several of those same agreements. While Lisa filed the legal paperwork, Blake drove to his construction site office where Marcus Chun was waiting with progress reports. Marcus had been with Blake since the early days, a soft-spoken man whose competence was matched only by his loyalty. The surveillance equipment worked perfectly. Marcus reported Ashley spent last night at Kyle's penthouse and they were definitely celebrating. Kyle opened a bottle of champagne that probably cost more than most people make in a month. Show me. Marcus pulled up video footage on his laptop. Blake watched Ashley and Kyle toast their victory, laughing about how easily they had manipulated the blue-collar idiot. Kay made jokes about Blake's intelligence while Ashley mocked his attempts to fit in with her family. There's more, Marcus said, switching to a different camera angle. They've been planning this for longer than we thought. Rebecca Hoffman isn't just Kyle's wife. She's been in on it, too. Apparently, she's having her own affair with someone from Ashley's yoga studio, and they're all planning to use the divorce settlements to fund some kind of commune in Costa Rica. Blake studied the footage carefully. Rebecca Hoffman had always seemed like a victim in her marriage to Kyle, but apparently she was just another predator wearing a different mask. This information changed his calculations significantly. What about the building inspections? Blake asked. Marcus grinned. That's the beautiful part. Remember how Kyle has been pushing Gregory to renovate 3 of his older hotels? The ones where they've been cutting corners on permits and safety inspections? Blake nodded. Kay had frequently bragged about his ability to navigate bureaucratic red tape when it came to construction projects. Well, it turns out that when you really examine the paperwork, those renovations were never properly approved. The electrical work doesn't meet code. The structural modifications were done without permits and the fire safety systems are completely inadequate. A thorough inspection would shut down all 3 properties immediately. And who requested the thorough inspection? An anonymous concerned citizen who noticed some irregularities and reported them to the City Safety Commission. The inspections are scheduled for today. Blake's phone buzzed with a text from Tony Russo. Package delivered to all 3 locations. Gift will be unwrapped at 2 p.m. Blake checked his watch. It was 11:30 a.m. In 2.5 hours. Gregory Pimpton would discover that his 3 most profitable hotels had been declared safety hazards and would be shut down pending extensive renovations that would take months and cost millions. But that was just the beginning. Blake's second phone, the one Ashley didn't know about, showed 17 missed calls from her and 12 from Kyle. By now, they had probably discovered that the divorce papers they thought gave them complete victory had actually triggered a legal avalanche that threatened everything they owned. Marcus, Blake said, closing the laptop. I want you to personally deliver a message to Ashley at her mother's house. Tell her that her ex-husband would like to invite her to lunch tomorrow at the same restaurant where she had the divorce papers served. Tell her if she doesn't come, the photographs and videos we've collected over the past 3 months will be delivered to every society reporter in the city. Marcus nodded. And if she asks what photographs, smiled, tell her we have footage of her and Kyle's business meetings in hotel rooms across 3 states, including the one where they discussed having Rebecca's yoga instructor kill her husband in a staged accident. Marcus' eyes widened. We have footage of them planning murder. No, Blake replied. But Ashley doesn't know that. Fear, Marcus, is often more powerful than truth. By tomorrow, Ashley will be so terrified of what we might know that she'll agree to almost anything. As Blake drove home to his empty house, the one Ashley had redecorated to her family's taste, his phone rang. Detective Ray Volov's name appeared on the screen. Blake. Ray's voice was tense. I've got some news you need to hear. Kyle Hoffman has been asking around about you, specifically about hiring someone to handle a problem permanently. He's not just planning to destroy you financially. He wants you gone. Blake pulled over and parked. This was an unexpected development, though not entirely surprising. Men like Kyle didn't handle being outmaneuvered well, and they had a tendency to escalate rather than retreat. How certain are you about this? Blake asked. Certain enough that I've already assigned protective surveillance to your property and work sites. Kyle reached out to some very dangerous people, Blake. People who don't ask questions if the price is right. Blake felt something cold settle in his chest. He had planned for financial and social warfare, but physical violence changed the rules of engagement entirely. Fortunately, Blake Morrison had learned a long time ago that sometimes the best defense was an overwhelming offense. Ray. Blake said, I need you to do something for me. I need Kyle Hoffman to believe that I'm exactly the kind of man he should be afraid of. Chapter 4. Escalation. Blake's house felt different without Ashley's presence. Cleaner, quieter, and somehow more honest. He stood in what used to be their bedroom, now stripped of her belongings, and planned his next moves with the methodical precision of a master craftsman. His phone had been ringing constantly since noon. Ashley, Kyle, Gregory, Patricia, and even Rebecca had all attempted to reach him. Blake let every call go to voicemail, understanding that silence was often the most unnerving response to panic. The hotel shutdowns had proceeded exactly as planned. By 3:00 p.m., 3 of Gregory's most profitable properties were cordoned off with safety violation notices, and local news crews were reporting on the shocking safety failures at luxury Pimpton hotels. The estimated cost to bring the buildings up to code was approaching $8 million. And every day, the hotels remained closed would cost Gregory approximately $50,000 in lost revenue. But the legal paperwork was producing even better results. Lisa Rodriguez had called to report that Gregory's lawyers were in full crisis mode, trying to understand how routine family business loans had suddenly become personal liability nightmares. Kyle's high-end real estate deals were also under scrutiny as several city permits were discovered to have irregularities that matched the pattern at the Pimpton hotels. Blake walked to his garage where he kept his personal workshop separate from the business equipment. Here, surrounded by tools that had built his fortune, he felt most like himself. The walls were covered with photographs from construction sites, commendations from city officials, and newspaper clippings documenting Morrison demolition success stories. But tonight, the workshop served a different purpose. Blake opened a locked cabinet and removed a laptop that Ashley had never seen. This computer contained 3 months of surveillance data, financial investigations, and psychological profiles that would have impressed FBI behavioral analysts. Blake had learned early in his business career that information was the most valuable commodity in any negotiation. While Ashley and Kyle had been playing their little games of deception, Blake had been building a comprehensive understanding of everyone involved in their scheme. Rebecca Hoffman, for instance, wasn't just Kyle's neglected wife. She was a former pharmaceutical researcher who had been quietly embezzling money from her husband's accounts to fund her lover's struggling yoga studio. The yoga instructor, David Park, had a criminal history that included assault charges and suspected involvement in an insurance fraud scheme. Patricia Pimpton's charity work was largely a facade for money laundering, moving dirty money from her husband's more questionable business partners through fake donations to causes that existed only on paper. Gregory himself had been paying substantial bribes to city officials for years, ensuring that Pimpton hotel projects received favorable treatment. But the most interesting discovery was Ashley's true motivation for the divorce. She wasn't just trying to marry Kyle. She was trying to escape prosecution for her role in a hit-and-run accident that had killed a pedestrian 3 years ago. Kyle had been driving, but Ashley had convinced the victim's family to accept a quiet settlement in exchange for not pursuing criminal charges. The money had come from funds Ashley had been secretly siphoning from Blake's business accounts. Blake's computer chimed with an incoming video call from Tony Russo. Blake accepted the call and Tony's weathered face appeared on screen. "Boss," Tony said. "We've got a problem. Kay hired some muscle to pay you a visit tonight. 3 guys with a reputation for making problems disappear permanently. They're planning to make it look like a home invasion gone wrong." Blake felt his pulse quicken, but his voice remained steady. "Where are they now?" "About 20 minutes out from your location. But here's the thing. I've been tracking them since they left Kyle's place, and I don't think they know what they're walking into." Blake smiled grimly. "What do you mean? Remember when you asked me to set up security for your house after the divorce papers were filed? Well, let's just say that anyone who tries to break into your place tonight is going to get a very unpleasant surprise." Blake had forgotten about the security upgrades Tony had insisted on installing. Tony's military background included expertise in what he politely called perimeter defense, and Blake had given him carte blanche to protect the property. "What kind of surprise are we talking about, Tony?" "The kind that will leave them wishing they'd chosen a different line of work." "Don't worry, boss. Nothing fatal, but they'll definitely need medical attention. And more importantly, they'll have a story to tell Kyle about exactly how dangerous it is to underestimate Blake Morrison." Blake considered this development. Kyle's decision to hire killers represented a significant escalation, but it also provided an opportunity. If Blake could prove that Kyle had attempted to have him murdered, it would destroy any remaining credibility Kyle had and potentially result in criminal charges. "Tony, I need you to make sure we get everything on video. High definition, multiple angles, and audio if possible. I want Kyle's hired thugs telling us exactly who sent them and why." "Already taken care of. We'll have enough evidence to put Kyle away for conspiracy to commit murder." Blake's other phone buzzed with a text from Ray Volov. "Blake, get out of your house now. Multiple armed suspects approaching your location." Blake typed back. It's under control. Just make sure you're ready to arrest whoever walks away from this. As Blake settled into his favorite armchair, positioned with a clear view of the front door and windows, he reflected on how dramatically the situation had evolved. This morning, he had been planning a careful campaign of financial and social destruction. Tonight, he was dealing with hired killers, but Blake Morrison hadn't built a successful business by backing down from challenges. If Kyle wanted to play with deadly stakes, Blake was prepared to show him exactly what happened when you threatened a man who understood both construction and demolition at a very personal level. His phone rang, displaying Ashley's number. Blake answered on the fourth ring. Blake. Ashley's voice was strained, frightened. We need to talk about what? About the hotel shutdowns? About the legal papers? About all of it? This has gone too far. Blake checked his watch. Kyle's hired thugs would arrive in approximately 10 minutes. Ashley, I'm a little busy right now, but I agree that we should talk. How about lunch tomorrow at Palazzo Rosso? Same private dining room where you served me divorce papers. Blake, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Blake interrupted. You and Kyle tried to destroy me, and now you're discovering that I'm not as easy to destroy as you thought. Kyle made the mistake of escalating this beyond financial warfare. And now he's going to learn why that was a very poor decision. What are you talking about? Blake heard vehicles pulling into his driveway. I'm talking about the 3 men Kyle hired to kill me tonight. They should be knocking on my door any minute now. Ashley's gasp was audible over the phone. Blake, I swear I didn't know. Save it for someone who still cares, Blake said, ending the call. Through his window, Blake could see 3 figures approaching his front door. They moved with professional coordination, weapons visible in their hands. Blake felt a familiar calm settle over him. The same feeling he experienced when operating heavy machinery or placing explosive charges for demolition. Focus, precision, and perfect timing were about to become very important. His phone buzzed with a final text from Tony. Showtime, boss. Let's see how tough Kyle's boys really are. Chapter 5. The Reckoning. Blake watched through his window as 3 armed men approached his front door with the confidence of predators who believed they held every advantage. They had no idea they were walking into a trap that had been months in the making. The first man reached for the door handle and Blake's house erupted into chaos. Tony's security modifications were both elegant and devastating. Motion sensors triggered blinding strobe lights while speakers hidden throughout the property unleashed a deafening alarm designed to disorient and panic. The front porch collapsed under the first intruder's weight. A carefully weakened structure that dropped him 8 feet into a pit lined with industrial foam and equipped with restraint cables. The second man tried to retreat but found himself caught in razor wire that Tony had concealed along the property's perimeter. The third man attempted to breach a side window, only to discover that Blake's house had been retrofitted with security glass that could stop a rifle bullet. Within 90 seconds, all 3 men were immobilized, their weapons scattered, their night vision destroyed by the strobes and their hearing compromised by the alarm system. Blake calmly walked outside carrying a high-definition camera and wearing military-grade hearing protection. Gentlemen, Blake said, his voice carrying easily over the diminishing alarm. Let's have a conversation about who sent you and why. The first man, suspended in the foam-lined pit, tried to maintain his professional demeanor. We don't know what you're talking about, man. We're just here to rob the place. Blake laughed. Really? You drove directly to my address, bypassed 3 other houses that would have been easier targets, and came armed with enough firepower to outfit a small military unit. Try again. Ray Volov arrived with backup just as Blake was finishing his impromptu interrogation. The 3 men faced with overwhelming evidence and the promise of reduced charges provided detailed statements about Kyle Hoffman's hiring them to eliminate Blake and make it look like a home invasion. Blake Rye said as the last suspect was loaded into a patrol car. Kyle just bought himself a conspiracy to commit murder charge. With the evidence we've got, he's looking at 25 to life. But Blake wasn't satisfied with simply having Kyle arrested. He understood that true justice required destroying the entire network of corruption and betrayal that had targeted him. Ray, I need a favor. Can you delay Kyle's arrest for exactly 24 hours? Ray raised an eyebrow. Blake, that's asking me to obstruct justice. I'm asking you to let me finish what they started. Kay tried to have me killed tonight, which means the rules of engagement have changed completely. Give me 24 hours to settle this properly, and then you can arrest whatever's left of him. Ray considered this request carefully. He had known Blake since childhood and understood that beneath the calm exterior was a man capable of extraordinary determination when pushed beyond his limits. 24 hours, Ray agreed. But Blake, whatever you're planning, make sure it doesn't cross any lines that I can't uncross later. After the police departed, Blake returned to his workshop and activated a secure video call with his team. Marcus, Tony, and Lisa appeared on screen, their faces showing a mixture of concern and anticipation. Status report. Blake said. Lisa spoke first. Gregory Pimpton is in full panic mode. His lawyers contacted me directly, offering complete capitulation on the divorce settlement if we'll just make the hotel problems disappear. He's willing to give you everything. The house, the businesses, even Ashley's trust fund. Ashley's trust fund. Blake hadn't known such a thing existed. $3 million held in reserve since she turned 18, but only accessible upon marriage or with family consent. Gregory's offering to sign it over to you as part of the settlement. Marcus jumped in. The hotel shutdowns are cascading faster than we anticipated. 2 other Pimpton properties are now under investigation and the negative publicity is driving away bookings across the entire chain. Gregory's looking at potential bankruptcy within 6 months. Tony's report was more personal. Kyle's been trying to hire additional muscle since his first team disappeared tonight. Word's gotten out that he's poison, though. Nobody wants to work for a guy who sends people into obvious traps. Blake absorbed this information while formulating his final strategy. Kyle had attempted murder, which justified any response Blake chose to make. But Blake's revenge would be more sophisticated than simple violence. It would be complete and permanent destruction of everything Kyle valued. Here's what we're going to do, Blake said. Lisa, accept Gregory's settlement offer, but add one condition. Ashley and Kyle must appear at tomorrow's lunch meeting to personally apologize and sign additional documents. Tell Gregory that if they refuse, we'll release everything we know about his bribes, Ashley's hit and run and Kyle's murder conspiracy to every media outlet in the country. And if they agree to come, Lisa asked. Blake's smile was cold. Then we'll give them exactly what they deserve. Blake spent the rest of the night preparing for what he knew would be the final confrontation. The lunch meeting at Palazzo Rosso would be more than just a conclusion to their legal dispute. It would be Ashley and Kyle's reckoning for 3 years of betrayal and attempted murder. By dawn, Blake had received confirmation that all parties would attend the lunch meeting. Gregory and Patricia would be there to personally oversee the settlement. Ashley and Kyle would be present to sign the apology documents, and even Rebecca Hoffman would attend to provide her statement about Kyle's attempted murder conspiracy. Blake dressed carefully in the same suit he had worn 3 days earlier when he signed the divorce papers. But this time he wasn't walking into an ambush. He was walking into his victory celebration. His phone buzzed with a final message from Tony. Everything's ready. Boss, they have no idea what's waiting for them. Blake checked his watch. It was time to finish what Ashley and Kyle had started. Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. Palazzo Rosso's private dining room had been transformed into a courtroom where Blake Morrison would serve as judge, jury, and executioner. Blake arrived 30 minutes early, wanting to ensure everything was perfect for what would be the most important meeting of his life. The same table where he had found divorce papers now held carefully organized legal documents, photographic evidence, and video equipment that would record every moment of the proceedings. Blake had spared no expense in preparing for this confrontation. He wanted a permanent record of their confession and humiliation. Gregory Pimpton arrived first, accompanied by his wife, Patricia, and 2 lawyers who looked like they had been working around the clock. Gregory's usual arrogance had been replaced by barely controlled desperation. The hotel shutdowns had cost him nearly $1 million in the past 3 days, and his financial empire was teetering on the edge of collapse. Blake, Gregory said, his voice strained. I want you to know that Patricia and I had no idea about Ashley's indiscretions. If we had known, we would never have supported her actions. Blake gestured to the chairs arranged around the table. Please sit. We begin when everyone arrives. Ashley entered next, accompanied by Kyle, Hoffman, and Rebecca. Ashley looked haggarded. The stress of the past few days had aged her visibly. Kyle, however, still projected confidence, though Blake noticed the slight tremor in his hands that suggested barely controlled rage. Rebecca Hoffman surprised Blake with her appearance. Instead of the downtrodden wife he had expected, she carried herself with the poise of someone who had finally stopped pretending to be a victim. Now that everyone's here, Blake said, taking his seat at the head of the table, let's discuss why we're really gathered today. He activated the video recording equipment and placed a stack of photographs in the center of the table. The images showed Ashley and Kyle in compromising positions across multiple hotels and locations, time-stamped and documented with meticulous precision. 3 months ago, Blake began, my wife served me divorce papers in this same room, claiming I was infertile and therefore unworthy of continuing the Pimpton family line. What she didn't know was that I had already discovered her 5-year affair with Kyle Hoffman and her deliberate use of birth control to prevent conception. Ashley's face went white. Kyle leaned forward aggressively, but Blake continued without pause. Over the past 3 months, I've documented not just the affair, but the entire network of corruption, embezzlement, and criminal activity that connects everyone at this table. Blake placed additional documents on the table. Financial records, medical reports, and legal filings that told the complete story of their deception. Gregory, your hotels have been systematically violating safety codes for years, with Kyle facilitating bribes to city officials to avoid inspections. Patricia, your charity work is a money laundering operation that has processed over $2 million in illegal funds. Gregory started to protest, but Blake held up his hand. Rebecca, your embezzlement of Kyle's accounts to fund your lover's yoga studio amounts to nearly $500,000. And Ashley, Blake turned to face his soon-to-be ex-wife. Your involvement in a fatal hit-and-run 3 years ago, followed by witness intimidation and evidence tampering, constitutes multiple felonies. The room erupted in denials and accusations, but Blake remained calm. But the most serious charge, Blake continued, is conspiracy to commit murder. Kyle, last night you hired 3 armed men to kill me and make it look like a home invasion. They're currently in custody and have provided detailed statements about your instructions. Kyle shot to his feet. You can't prove any of this. Those men are criminals. Their testimony is worthless. Blake smiled and activated a laptop computer. Actually, I can prove all of it. The screen displayed high-definition footage of Kyle meeting with the hired killers. Audio clearly capturing his instructions to eliminate the problem permanently and make sure it looks random. This video was taken yesterday afternoon using equipment installed in your office building. Did you know that Morrison Demolition handled the construction contract for your building's recent renovations? Kyle, we have access to every room, every corridor, and every conversation. Kay's confidence finally cracked. What do you want? Blake spread a new set of documents across the table. I want everything. Complete financial restitution for all money stolen or misdirected. Public confessions to all criminal activities. And most importantly, I want all of you to disappear from my life permanently. He handed specific documents to each person. Gregory, you're signing over complete ownership of Ashley's trust fund. Your stake in Morrison Demolition Partnerships and the 3 properties currently under safety violations. The estimated value is approximately $12 million. Gregory's lawyers tried to intervene, but Blake cut them off. The alternative is federal criminal charges for bribery, safety violations that resulted in public endangerment, and conspiracy. Gregory can keep his other properties and avoid prison, or he can fight me and lose everything. Ashley, Blake continued, you're signing a confession to the hit-and-run incident along with a complete financial disclosure of all assets acquired during our marriage. You'll also be relocating to a different state and never contacting me or my associates again. Ashley's voice was barely a whisper. Blake, please, Rebecca. Blake interrupted, turning to Kyle's wife. You're filing for divorce immediately and providing testimony about Kyle's criminal activities in exchange for immunity on the embezzlement charges. Rebecca nodded eagerly, gladly. Kyle destroyed my life years ago. Finally, Blake faced Kyle Hoffman. And you, Kyle, have a very simple choice. You can sign these documents confessing to attempted murder, fraud, and bribery. Agree to serve a minimum of 10 years in federal prison and forfeit all assets to pay restitution, or you can refuse and I'll release all of this evidence to the FBI, the IRS, and every media outlet in the country. Kyle's face was purple with rage. You blue-collar piece of garbage. You think you can threaten us? My family has connections you can't imagine. Blake's voice remained level. Your family had connections, Kyle. Past tense. As of this morning, your father's law firm is under investigation for the same bribery charges that implicate Gregory. Your brother's pharmaceutical company is being audited for the money laundering scheme connected to Patricia's charities. And your wife has already agreed to testify against you in exchange for immunity. Blake stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. You see, Kyle, you made one critical mistake when you decided to have me killed. You assumed I was some simple construction worker who could be eliminated without consequences. But I built my business by understanding how things work legally, financially, and politically when you threatened my life. You gave me justification to destroy yours completely. The room fell silent except for the sound of Patricia Peaton sobbing quietly. You have 15 minutes to sign these documents, Blake said, returning to his seat. After that, Detective Ray Volov and a team of federal agents will arrive to arrest everyone who hasn't cooperated. As if summoned by Blake's words, his phone buzzed with a text from Rye. FBI task force is in position. Give us the signal when you're ready. Blake looked around the table at the people who had tried to destroy him. In 15 minutes, they would all be either his prisoners or his partners in ensuring their own destruction. The clock is ticking, Blake said. Choose wisely. Chapter 7. The reckoning complete. One by one they signed. Gregory Pemberton's signature was shaky but determined. A man who understood that preserving some portion of his empire was better than losing everything to federal prosecution. Patricia's tears had dried into resigned acceptance as she signed her confession to money laundering and agreed to cooperate with federal investigators. Rebecca Hoffman signed her documents with obvious relief. Finally free from a marriage that had been a prison of manipulation and abuse. Her testimony would be devastating to Kyle's defense, and she seemed to relish the opportunity for revenge against the man who had made her life miserable for 8 years. Ashley's signature came last, written with the same precise handwriting that had pinned the cruel note Blake found 3 days ago. But her hand trembled as she signed away her trust fund, confessed to vehicular manslaughter, and agreed to permanent exile from the state. Only Kyle Hoffman refused to sign. "I'm not admitting to anything," Kyle said, pushing the documents away. "You can't prove I tried to have you killed, and everything else is circumstantial evidence that won't hold up in court." Blake checked his watch. "Kyle, you have 3 minutes before Detective Vaughn arrives with federal agents. Are you absolutely certain you want to handle this the hard way? Go to hell, Morrison." Blake nodded and sent a text message to Ray Voloff. "Come now, bring everything." Within 90 seconds, the private dining room was filled with law enforcement officers. Detective Voloff led the team, accompanied by FBI agents, IRS investigators, and federal prosecutors who had been building cases against the Pimpton organization for months. Kyle Hoffman. Agent Sarah Martinez announced, "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, federal bribery charges, and racketeering." As Kyle was handcuffed, he looked directly at Blake. "This isn't over, Morrison. My family has money and influence you can't imagine. I'll be out in 6 months, and when I am," Blake stood and walked over to Kyle, speaking quietly so only he could hear. "Kyle, let me explain something very important. Your family's money and influence disappeared this morning when the FBI raided your father's law firm, your brother's pharmaceutical company, and your mother's foundation. The evidence I've been gathering for 3 months implicated your entire family in a criminal enterprise that spans multiple states and involves dozens of felony charges." Kyle's face went white as Blake continued, "The hitmen you hired to kill me? They weren't just random criminals. They were federal informants who have been helping the FBI build a case against organized crime families that have been using your family's businesses to launder money. When you hired them to kill me, you provided the final piece of evidence the FBI needed to bring down your entire organization." Blake smiled as the reality hit Kyle. "You're not just facing charges for trying to have me killed, Kyle. You're facing charges for being part of a criminal conspiracy that includes murder, drug trafficking, and federal racketeering. The minimum sentence for your crimes is life in prison without possibility of parole." As Kyle was led away in handcuffs, screaming threats and denials, Blake turned his attention to the remaining family members who had signed their confessions. "Gregory, Patricia, Ashley," Blake said, "you've all cooperated, which means you'll receive the immunity agreements we discussed. However, those agreements come with conditions." Blake handed each of them a final document. "These are restraining orders that prevent any of you from coming within 100 miles of me, my business, or any of my associates. Violation of these orders will result in immediate arrest and prosecution for stalking and harassment. Additionally," Blake continued, "Ashley, your confession to the Hitan Run incident has been forwarded to the district attorney's office. You'll serve 18 months in minimum security prison, followed by 5 years of probation. The victim's family has also been notified and will be receiving the financial restitution you agreed to pay." Ashley's voice was barely audible. "Blake, I know you hate me, but I need you to understand. I never wanted Kyle to hurt you. I never knew about the hitmen until tonight." Blake looked at his ex-wife, the woman he had loved and trusted for 7 years, and felt nothing but cold indifference. "Ashley, whether you knew about Kyle's murder plot is irrelevant. You spent 5 years lying to me, stealing from me, and planning to destroy my life for your own benefit. The fact that your lover escalated to attempted murder is just a natural consequence of the kind of people you chose to associate with." Blake gathered his documents and prepared to leave. "You're all free to go, but remember, I have evidence of every crime any of you have ever committed, and I have federal agents who will prosecute those crimes if you ever cross me again." As Blake walked toward the door, Gregory Pimpton called out to him, "Blake, wait. I know this doesn't excuse what Ashley did, but I want you to understand that Patricia and I genuinely believed you were part of our family. We respected your work ethic and your integrity. If we had known about Ashley's deception," Blake turned back to face Gregory. "You knew Gregory. Maybe not the specific details, but you knew Ashley was unhappy in our marriage. You knew Kyle was involved with her inappropriately. And you knew I was being set up to take the fall for something. You chose to look the other way because it was convenient for your family's financial interests. Blake's voice carried no emotion, only finality. You taught Ashley that loyalty was optional and that betrayal was acceptable if it served the family's purposes. Kay learned the same lesson from his own family. The only surprise is that it took this long for their corruption to catch up with them. Blake left the restaurant and walked to his truck where Tony Russo was waiting with Marcus Chun and Lisa Rodriguez. His entire team had worked tirelessly for 3 months to make this moment possible. Boss Tony said, "I've got to admit that was the most beautiful demolition job I've ever seen. You didn't just tear down their lives, you made them hand you the explosives." Marcus nodded approvingly. Kyle's facing life in prison. Ashley's headed to jail and exile. And the Peyton Empire is bankrupt. Plus, you're now worth approximately $15 million more than you were this morning. Lisa smiled. And the best part is it's all completely legal. Every document they signed will hold up in court, and every confession they made was given voluntarily with legal representation present. Blake looked back at Palazzo Rosso one final time. 3 days ago, he had walked into that restaurant as a man who had been betrayed and abandoned by everyone he trusted. Tonight, he was walking away as a man who had achieved perfect justice against those who had tried to destroy him. "Gentlemen, lady," Blake said to his team. "Tomorrow, we start building something new. Morrison Demolition is about to become Morrison Construction and Development, and we're going to create an empire that makes the Peyton organization look like a children's lemonade stand." As they drove away from the restaurant, Blake's phone buzzed with a text from Ray Voloff. Kyle Hoffman has been charged with conspiracy to commit murder, federal racketeering, and about 20 other felonies. The FBI says he'll never see the outside of a prison cell again. "Nice work, Blake." Blake smiled and deleted the message. Justice had been served, revenge had been achieved, and tomorrow would be the first day of his new life. A life where betrayal had consequences and loyalty was rewarded. Chapter 8. The New Foundation. 6 months later, Blake Morrison stood on the construction site of what would become the largest mixed-use development project in the city's history. The Morrison Tower would house luxury apartments, commercial space, and the headquarters of Morrison Construction and Development, a company that had grown from 15 employees to over 200 in the months since the Pimpton Empire collapsed. The morning newspaper lay on Blake's desk, open to a small item buried on page 12. Kyle Hoffman, former real estate developer, sentenced to life in prison without parole for conspiracy to commit murder and federal racketeering charges. The article noted that Hoffman's conviction had been secured largely through testimony from his ex-wife, Rebecca, and evidence provided by an anonymous businessman who had been targeted for assassination. Blake folded the newspaper and filed it away. Kyle's conviction marked the end of a chapter, but Blake had been focused on building rather than dwelling on the past. Justice had been served, and now it was time to create something better than what had been destroyed. Marcus Chun approached with architectural plans for the tower's commercial levels. "Boss, we've got 3 major tenants confirmed for the lower floors, and the restaurant space is generating serious interest from some high-end operators." Blake studied the plans with satisfaction. The restaurant space would occupy the ground floor, featuring floor-to ceiling windows and an elegant private dining area that would serve as a reminder of how far he had come. "Any word from the City Planning Commission about the Patan properties?" Marcus nodded. "Gregory's 3 hotels that were shut down for safety violations are going up for auction next month. The minimum bid is set at $2 million for all 3 properties combined. Gregory's bankruptcy filing means he can't afford to bring them up to code." Blake smiled. "Submit a bid for $2.1 million. I want to own those properties and turn them into something the city can be proud of." The irony wasn't lost on Blake that he would soon own the hotels that had been used to launder money and facilitate the corruption that had targeted him. But Blake believed in redemption through reconstruction, tearing down what was corrupt and building something honest in its place. His phone buzzed with a call from Lisa Rodriguez. "Blake, I've got news about Ashley's sentencing hearing. She's been granted early release for good behavior and cooperation with federal investigators. She'll be out in 6 weeks instead of serving the full 18 months. Blake considered this information without emotion. Ashley's cooperation had helped convict Kyle and several other members of the criminal organization, which had always been part of the plea agreement. "Has she made any attempts to contact me?" Blake asked. "No, and she's legally prohibited from doing so under the restraining order. She's also required to relocate to California immediately upon release and maintain no contact with anyone from her previous life." Blake nodded. Ashley would have to build a new life from scratch with no family money, no social connections, and a criminal record that would follow her forever. It was a fitting consequence for someone who had chosen betrayal over loyalty. Tony Russo's voice crackled over the construction site radio. "Boss, you've got visitors in the site office. Says they're from the mayor's office." Blake walked to the temporary office building that served as Morrison Construction's headquarters during the tower project. Inside, he found Deputy Mayor Jennifer Walsh and City Planning Director Robert Kim waiting with an impressive collection of documents. "Mr. Morrison," Deputy Mayor Walsh said, "we're here to discuss a proposal that could benefit both your company and the city's development goals." Blake gestured for them to sit. "I'm listening." Director Kim spread architectural drawings across Blake's desk. "The city is planning a major revitalization project for the downtown waterfront district. We need a construction company with the capability to handle a $100 million development that includes residential, commercial, and municipal buildings." Blake studied the plans carefully. The project was massive, larger than anything Morrison Construction had attempted, but entirely within their capabilities. "What's the timeline?" Blake asked. 5 years for complete project completion, Deputy Mayor Walsh replied. "But here's what makes this proposal special. The city wants to partner with a local company that has a reputation for integrity and community investment. Morrison Construction has earned both through your work over the past 15 years. Blake realized that his reputation for honest business practices, the same integrity that Kyle and Ashley had tried to exploit, was now opening doors to opportunities that would have been impossible under the old system of bribes and family connections. "There's one more thing," Director Kim added. "Part of the waterfront project includes a memorial park dedicated to victims of hit-and-run accidents. The park would be named after the pedestrian who was killed 3 years ago, the case where you provided evidence that led to the driver's conviction." Blake felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Ashley's confession had not only secured her own conviction, but had provided closure for a family that had been denied justice for 3 years. "When do you need our proposal?" Blake asked. "The bidding process opens next month," Deputy Mayor Walsh replied. "But between you and me, Morrison Construction is the city's preferred contractor. Your company has never been involved in corruption scandals, never failed to complete a project on time, and never compromised on safety standards." After the city officials left, Blake walked to the construction site's edge and looked out over the skyline. In the distance, he could see the buildings that had once housed Kyle's real estate empire. Now empty and scheduled for demolition. The Pimpton hotel chain had been sold to pay debts, and the buyers planned to completely renovate the properties under new management. Blake's phone rang, displaying Rebecca Hoffman's number. Since Kyle's conviction, Rebecca had become something of an advocate for victims of domestic manipulation, using her experience to help other women recognize and escape similar situations. "Blake," Rebecca said, "I wanted to thank you again for giving me the evidence I needed to divorce Kyle and start over. The divorce settlement included enough money for me to go back to school and finish my medical degree." "You don't need to thank me, Rebecca. You were as much a victim of Kyle's manipulation as I was." "Maybe, but you showed me that victims don't have to stay victims. I'm graduating from medical school next year, and I've been accepted into a residency program specializing in emergency medicine." Blake smiled. Rebecca's transformation from manipulated wife to confident professional was proof that people could overcome betrayal and build better lives. "There's something else," Rebecca continued. "Kay tried to contact me from prison last week. He's appealing his conviction and wants me to change my testimony." Blake's voice hardened. "Are you considering it?" "Absolutely not. Kyle made his choices, and now he has to live with the consequences. I just wanted you to know in case he tries to cause trouble for you, too." After ending the call, Blake realized that Kyle's attempt to overturn his conviction was exactly the kind of persistence that had led to his downfall. Some people never learn that continuing to fight a battle they had already lost only made their situation worse. Blake's reflection was interrupted by Marcus approaching with a tablet displaying financial reports. "Boss, I've got the quarterly numbers. Morrison Construction posted a 47% profit increase over last quarter, and our contracts for next year are already worth more than our total revenue for the past 3 years combined." Blake reviewed the numbers with satisfaction. The company's growth had been built on the foundation of honest work and fair dealing, principles that had seemed outdated in Kyle and Ashley's world of corruption and shortcuts. "Marcus, I want you to set up a meeting with the bank about expanding our equipment financing. If we're going to handle the waterfront project, we'll need to double our heavy machinery capabilities." "Already scheduled for tomorrow morning," Marcus replied. The bank president called personally to discuss our financing options. Apparently, having no criminal record and a perfect payment history makes us a very attractive client. Blake laughed. Who would have thought that honesty and integrity could be such valuable business assets? As the sun set over the construction site, Blake felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had not only survived the betrayal that had threatened to destroy his life. He had used it as the foundation for building something better and stronger than he had ever imagined possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. But Blake Morrison was ready for whatever came next. He had learned that loyalty and integrity weren't weaknesses to be exploited. They were strengths that could overcome any betrayal and build empires that would last forever. Chapter 9. Empire Built on Ashes. 2 years after the restaurant confrontation that changed everything. Blake Morrison stood before the completed Morrison Tower, watching as the sunset painted its glass facade in brilliant gold. The 50-story building dominated the skyline, a monument to what could be achieved when integrity and determination replaced corruption and betrayal. The ground floor restaurant foundation had become the city's most exclusive dining establishment. Blake had personally overseen its design, ensuring that the private dining room where Ashley had served him divorce papers was now a space where honest business deals were celebrated and where community leaders gathered to plan the city's future. Detective Ray Volov approached from the tower's main entrance carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing the broad smile of a man who had just witnessed perfect justice. Blake Rye said, "I thought you'd want to know that Kyle Hoffman's final appeal was rejected by the state Supreme Court today. He'll never see the outside of a prison cell." Blake accepted the champagne bottle and read the label. A vintage from the year he had started Morrison Demolition with nothing but a sledgehammer and an unshakable work ethic. "Any word on Ashley?" Blake asked. "She's working as a night shift clerk at a convenience store in Los Angeles," Rye replied. "Living in a studio apartment, drives a 15-year-old Honda, and has no social media presence. By all accounts, she's become exactly what she deserves to be, a nobody." Blake felt no satisfaction from Ashley's downfall, only the cold justice of consequences finally catching up to choices. She had chosen betrayal over loyalty, shortcuts over honest work, and cruelty over compassion. Her current life was simply the natural result of those decisions. Tony Russo emerged from the tower's construction elevator, removing his hard hat and grinning with the pride of a master craftsman who had just completed his greatest work. "Boss Tony said the penthouse office is ready for your final inspection. I've got to say it's the most beautiful workspace I've ever seen." Blake rode the elevator to the 50th floor where his new office occupied the entire level. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided panoramic views of the city and Blake's desk was positioned so he could see every major construction project Morrison had completed over the past 2 years. The waterfront development was nearing completion. A $100 million project that had transformed abandoned warehouses into luxury condominiums, commercial spaces, and a public park that had become the city's crown jewel. The memorial garden for hit-and-run victims occupied the center of the park, featuring a fountain where families could find peace and remember loved ones. Blake's phone chimed with a video call from Marcus Chun, who was currently overseeing Morrison Construction's expansion into 3 neighboring states. Blake Marcus said from a construction site in Philadelphia, "I've got news about the Peton properties. The renovations are complete and all 3 hotels are now operating as Morrison hospitality locations. They're booked solid for the next 6 months." Blake smiled. The hotels that had once been centers of corruption and safety violations were now models of hospitality excellence, employing over 400 people and contributing millions of dollars annually to the local economy. "What about the medical center project?" Blake asked. "Rebecca Hoffman." "Well, Dr. Rebecca Chen now." Marcus grinned at his own name. "Coincidence? She completed her residency and is heading up the emergency medicine department at Morrison Medical Center. The facility opened last month and is already being recognized as a model for trauma care." Blake nodded with satisfaction. Rebecca's transformation from manipulated wife to accomplished physician represented everything he believed about redemption through hard work and honest purpose. Lisa Rodriguez's voice came through the office's intercom system. "Blake, you have visitors in the lobby. Gregory and Patricia Pimpton are here to see you." Blake considered this unexpected development. He hadn't spoken to Ashley's parents since the restaurant confrontation 2 years ago, though he had heard through various sources that Gregory had managed to avoid bankruptcy by liquidating most of his assets and accepting a reduced role in what remained of his business empire. "Send them up," Blake said. Gregory and Patricia Peton entered Blake's office looking like aged survivors of a natural disaster. Gregory's signature arrogance had been replaced by the humble demeanor of a man who had learned hard lessons about consequences. Patricia appeared nervous, clutching a small wrapped package. "Blake," Gregory said, "we know we have no right to ask for your time, but we wanted to see you in person to deliver something that belongs to you." Patricia stepped forward and handed Blake the wrapped package. This was meant to be Ashley's wedding gift from her grandmother. A family heirloom that was supposed to be passed down to her children. "Given everything that's happened, we thought you should have it instead." Blake unwrapped the package to reveal an antique pocket watch engraved with the Morrison family name and a date from 1892. "How do you have a Morrison family heirloom?" Blake asked. Gregory's voice carried genuine emotion. "Because your great-great-grandfather Thomas Morrison was Patricia's great-great-uncle. Ashley was actually your distant cousin Blake." We knew this when you and Ashley met, but we never told either of you because the family connection was so remote. Blake studied the pocket watch, feeling the weight of generations of Morrison craftsmanship in his hands. The irony was profound. Ashley had spent years believing she was superior to Blake's working-class background, never knowing she was rejecting her own family heritage. "There's something else," Patricia said. "We've been following your success over the past 2 years, and we wanted you to know that we're proud of what you've accomplished. You've built something honest and lasting, something that honors the Morrison name better than we ever honored the Peyton name." Gregory nodded. "Blake, we failed as parents and as business people because we taught Ashley that shortcuts and manipulation were acceptable paths to success. You've proven that integrity and hard work are not just moral choices. They're also the most effective business strategies." Blake looked out his office windows at the city skyline dotted with projects bearing the Morrison name. "Gregory, Patricia, I appreciate you bringing me this watch and I accept your apology, but I want you to understand something. I didn't build this empire to prove anything to your family or to get revenge on Ashley. I built it because it's who I am." Blake turned back to face them. "Ashley made the mistake of thinking that because I worked with my hands, I wasn't intelligent. Kyle made the mistake of thinking that because I respected honest work, I was weak. You made the mistake of thinking that because I came from a working-class background, I couldn't understand complex business or legal strategies." Gregory and Patricia listened intently, as Blake continued. "But intelligence isn't measured by family pedigree. Strength isn't measured by willingness to hurt others. And business success isn't measured by how many people you can manipulate. It's measured by how much value you can create for your community and how many people's lives you can improve through honest work." Blake walked to his desk and picked up architectural plans for Morrison Construction's next major project, affordable housing development that would provide quality homes for working families. "This is my legacy," Blake said, showing them the plans. "Not revenge against people who betrayed me, but homes for families who work hard and deserve better opportunities. Not monuments to my ego, but infrastructure that will serve this city for generations." Patricia wiped away tears as she looked at the plans. "Blake, Ashley could have been part of this. She could have been your partner in building something beautiful instead of trying to tear you down for money she didn't even need." Blake's voice was gentle but final. "Ashley made her choice, Patricia. She chose to see me as an obstacle to overcome rather than a partner to support. That choice led to every consequence that followed. Kyle's influence, the criminal conspiracy, her exile, and her current situation." Gregory extended his hand for a handshake. "Blake, I know this doesn't change anything, but Patricia and I want you to know that we consider you the son we should have raised. Ashley lost the best man she'll ever know." Blake shook Gregory's hand, feeling the genuine remorse in the older man's grip. "Gregory, you're both welcome to stay for dinner at Foundation tonight. I'd like you to meet Dr. for Rebecca Chun and some of the other people who've built new lives from the ashes of Kyle's criminal empire." As Gregory and Patricia left his office, Blake returned to his desk and opened the antique pocket watch. Inside the front cover was an engraving, "Thomas Morrison, Master Builder, 1892. Below it, in more recent script, someone had added Blake Morrison, Empire Builder, 2025. Blake realized that someone, probably Gregory or Patricia, had taken the watch to an engraver and added his name to the family history. It was a gesture of acceptance and recognition that meant more than any apology could convey. Blake's phone buzzed with a text from Tony Russo. "Boss, Foundation is ready for tonight's celebration dinner. The private dining room looks perfect. Nothing like the last time you ate there." Blake smiled and pocketed the watch. Tonight, he would dine in the same room where Ashley had tried to destroy him. But he would be surrounded by people who had helped him build something greater than revenge, a legacy of integrity, community service, and honest achievement. As Blake prepared to leave his office, he took one final look at the city spreading out below Morrison Tower. Somewhere in Los Angeles, Ashley was working a night shift and living with the consequences of her choices. Somewhere in federal prison, Ka was serving a life sentence for crimes that had seemed clever until they caught up with him. But Blake Morrison was home, surrounded by the empire he had built on the ashes of their betrayal. An empire that would endure long after their names were forgotten because it was founded on principles that never went out of style. Loyalty, integrity, and the unshakable belief that honest work could accomplish anything. Blake Morrison had learned that the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was building something so magnificent that it made your enemy's victories look like meaningless gestures. He had turned their betrayal into his foundation, their corruption into his strength, and their hatred into his fuel for creating something better than they had ever imagined possible. The watch in his pocket ticked steadily, marking time for a man who had discovered that true power came not from tearing others down, but from building something so strong that nothing could tear it down. Blake Morrison's empire was complete and it would stand forever.